Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth in the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case, off with their heads. Yes, Mother. I sigh into the line, wrapping the infamous cord around my finger. Of course, I'm fine. What? No, it's not like I'm in the States. This is Britain, God damn it. Mother, no, I think you should lie down for a while. Call Dad as well. He'd fancy a visit from you, I'm sure. And just like that, my hand smashes back on the receiver. Blood, Britain, eh? Who could ever have imagined Olivia, from the apartment up above, would pursue law in England? Well, for starters, certainly not her. A buggy sweeps by my rusted telephone box as I take a single drag on the cigarette laid before me in its little red tin box. Rainwater nearly splashes up on my impeccable outfit, the poor thing. I shake my fist at the driver, but there's no use. The lad's already way off into the distance. What would the world be without Britain? Perhaps every world has some sort of Britain as well. Little men in their fancy outfits, always circling each other with arguments. At least they're nothing like that bloody American man. What was his name again? Nixon, was it? Yes. Terrible, terrible people doing amazing things. I've always found it fascinating, you know? My red kitten heels splash against more rainwater. I curse myself silently for not bringing that little red umbrella with me. Perhaps I could pick it up on my way to the office. Their stares don't avoid me as I run by. I can catch those disgusting men from the corner of my eye, all staring. It's not as if I'm putting on a show, is it? Still, I can only imagine what they see. A French woman, plush red lips against fair skin. I even tried to wear my longer crimson dress today. Turns out, that effort proved fruitless. I jump into the office, gasping as the heat blasts me behind the wooden panels. In the background, I can hear softer jazz clashing with news reports from the telly, as if warring between each other. What is it this time? I ask Bonnie, the sharp woman sitting at the desk, or as she urges me to call her, Bonbon. Ridiculous name. Her bleached curls pull up nicely against her dark skin and bright yellow dress. She swears it's from that damn swinging Britain stage we're going through right now. She shrugs, leaning over to stare at the Pixel E screen. Those Beetle kids are going to broke up, she snaps back, leaning into the plush sides of her chair. The corners of her mouth edge up slightly as she stares at the messily done bun in my hair. How do you get your hair like that? Oh, I grin back, picking up the large manila folder before her. Do shut up. What's our next case? It's hard to say. Bonbon plucks a pen from her container, absent-mindedly scribbling on her schedule paper. They ordered us to take up all the spots for the month. All of them? My eyebrows shoot up as I feel my face grow red with anger. The audacity. Who do they think they are to order us around? There are nearly 1 million clients in London, all looking for lawyers. And yet this flash bastard thinks he's important enough to take all her attention. This is the case. She heaves more mundane folders toward me, all packed to the brim with paper. I know. It's a lot. You might even need to help us with this one, I tease. Not my style. Bonnie slumps back. Olivia, some of us girls aren't meant to be smart. We're just supposed to smile and look pretty. Some of us don't get enough funds to go to Oxford either, or travel back and forth from France. I ignore the dig. It's odd how Bonnie and I see ourselves as adults, despite both of us only just being able to drink. Right when I graduated from Oxford, I got accepted into this law firm, the best one in London. Sometimes I wonder if I'd even stay here without the job. Britain is just so dreary. It's quite depressing, especially at first glance. Maybe that's all it deserves. My heels clack down the hallway as I desert the drab lobby. When I finally reach my own personalized office, I feel as if I'm at home. I strut to the opalescent gramophone occupying the corner, placing a thin record upon it. Half my collection is sonata, while the other is all that new style of rock. I believe those critics have begun to call it punk? Whatever the case, it's the only connection I have to my generation. I often find myself discarded in this new, modern era. People believe there is to be so much more, but I can't possibly imagine what could come next. I sit at my small desk, shuffling through the papers that have been so graciously presented to me without haste. How does one look through these documents with such excitement, anyhow? I prefer the thrill of the courtroom to the dual sensation of passing through files and archives. Nevertheless, one needs to begin a task for them to finish it. After nearly 2 hours of reading, Bonnie returns to my office with a cup of tea and the person I'd least like to see right now. Darcy places a hand onto my desk, snatching the tea from Bonnie's hand. I thought you'd like some tea, she whispers in an accusatory manner. I see, I groan. So much so that you grabbed it straight from Bonnie's hand. Darcy snaps her long white fingers. Leave, pest. Make yourself useful and sort through the files. I all read. Our boss pulls her emerald-colored nails through her platinum blonde hair. Who's to say I didn't mess them up while you were wasting time? Bonnie's gum snaps as she pulls it back in from its bubble. Course, miss, as her thin legs carry her off down the drab walls. Darcy smashes her fists on my desk before traveling to the gramophone, looking down with distaste. I find all parts of your music taste disgusting. Thanks, I mumble, returning to my work. Now that you've given me some tea and made fun of my music, you can leave. I simply can't figure out how you work with this rock in the background. First of all, I sigh, throwing down some more papers to the floor. Darcy's eyes widen, but I only shrug. There's a method to my madness. They taught me some amazing things in your British college, you know? Ah, yes, she laments. The French girl decides to bless us with her knowledge. You know, Darcy dumps more papers onto the floor. In London, we don't do things with madness. We are intelligent, young women in a time of enlightenment. By the way, I didn't notice you at the Women's March last week. Were you busy? Darcy, I reply hastily. You know I'm all for women's rights. Of course, there are things that I'd rather be doing than marching for them. What? She squawks, almost knocking over a clock, now leaning dangerously toward the ground. She attempts to upright it, only to leave it tilted on its side. I suppose it's for the best. It's not like I often leave this small office. But then, if we march for it, people ridicule us. I'd rather work on letters to Parliament. And pray tell, where are these letters? I feel my face grow red as I bolt up. There better be a point to this meeting. Darcy backs away from my outburst, sighing. I wanted to ask you what you thought of the case. Dr. Sherman came into his house late at night. I recall the words from the page now lying on the checkerboard carpet. His daughter was still at the secondary school's dance recital, one she only feigned interest in. Darcy raises an eyebrow. I didn't remember anything like that in the case. I only assumed apologies. I'm sorry. Alice just brought a lot of attention to herself. Anyway, where were we? The very beginning, I believe. Precisely. I pretend not to notice the acid in her voice. Dr. Sherman swears that he was missing a certain object from his house. However, the object seems to be missing from the case. That's what I wanted to show you. Darcy nods. She flicks a paper toward my desk, containing only a black and white picture. I squint between the grainy pixels, making out an image. He's really suing for a hat? That hat costs over $100,000. Darcy discloses, snatching the photo back into her brown briefcase. But then, why is he suing for $1 million? I ask, still incredulous. He believes Blake Connery stole the hate. She adjusts her glasses before turning her back on me. Didn't you read the report? Of course I did. She sniffs at the outburst. Mr. Connery went to Sherman's house to go over their last meeting. Something about therapy, I believe. Perhaps this case could help you? Darcy points a pen towards me. You could use some anger management, and with that, the dastardly woman exits stage left, a smug smile still plastered on her face. Is it possible to hit a glass ceiling when your boss is a woman? Still, It's hard for me to believe it. And so you see, the red-faced man before me spits. That's why the hammer of justice must be brought down. My house was ravaged by this madman. I wouldn't dare say it for any of my other patients, but Blake Connery is a psychopath. Well, I can sense his anger rising even higher than mine as I look over the report. When you gave us access to your notes, it didn't seem as if Mr. Connery had any sort of mental illnesses besides his bipolar disorder. Exactly. He stands up, almost sloshing tea on my immaculate red dress. When Darcy had permitted me to interview Dr. Sherman, I'd expected someone much less unhinged. Why is it that the mad are always the most composed? He put on a farce. Dr. Sherman sits back down, crossing his hands. It's almost obvious that he's trying to pull some therapeutic shit on me. Of course, it'd take a lot more than that to faze me. Either Sherman's a bad therapist, or he truly is under a lot of stress from losing his hat. He made me believe that he's not a bloody thief. Let's not jump to accusations about the defendant. I place the papers back into their files to stop him from seeing the work I've already done. It wouldn't do for my client to already know I believe he's insane. Oh? A mousy blonde jumps into the scene, perhaps around 16, nearly the age I was when I first came to this despicable city. Ignore Papa's ravings. He's just angry still, and rightfully so. For a moment, I'm afraid that he'll slap the girl I've already assumed to be Alice, but he laughs it off. Perhaps she has a therapeutic herself. Despite that fact, something bubbles inside of me as I stare at her in the slightly blue dress. It's my most prized possession. I can make you another, Papa. Alice leans down to hug her father's neck. He smiles, then turns back to me, the joy already wiped off his face. What can I say? I have that effect on some people. I'm sure you can, my butterfly, but we must bring down justice. And with that, I'm immediately done. I've gathered almost useless information, and then it dawns on me. This is what it's going to be like for a straight month, maybe more. This is what I despise about this city. Everything is either gloomy or wonderful. The people, the jobs, the world. But one thing stays the same. In fact, that's the charm of it. Everything is stagnant, orbiting around the world. We all get a chance to be in the spotlight. And sometimes, that's the worst part. I think I have enough information for today. I sigh, placing my tea down with a slow clink. Is it enough to incarcerate the bastard? You're suing him, I remind Dr. Sherman. He's not going to jail. Ha! When I'm done with him, I'm sure that won't be the case. I hired the entirety of the best law firm in the city to work on my case. I can't lose. I'm done arguing with him. On any other day, I'd gladly debate with him until he realizes how much of a damn fool he is. But today, it's almost impossible. The streets are nearly deserted for a crisp May day. I can hear the roars of a crowd in the distance, but there's no one on this street. I check my watch, disappointing myself almost immediately. It's still technically my lunch break, and I haven't found anything useful yet. I'd usually be good and done by now. Instead, I'm stuck in this rabbit hole of a case. No evidence, and I'm surrounded by lunatics. Just my luck, naturally. Eventually, I'm face to face with the source of the crowd's cheering. A band plays upon a large wooden stage, surrounded by small bulbs holding dead string lights. It doesn't take long to find a familiar face. Bonnie? She twists around, staring at me in fear. Her voice comes out way too fast, almost like Dr. Sherman's. Okay, look, don't tell Darcy. I just heard they were playing today, and I'm not telling Darcy, I urge. Anyway, they're pretty good. Better than anyone else on the radio, at least. What's their name? The Hatters. Bonnie shrugs. I know. It's weird. No? I shake my head. More like a coincidence. Ugh. She hangs her tan arms around my neck, jumping to the dark, sporadic beat. Are you still on that case? Well, Bonnie. My voice drifts off before I can dish out a biting comment. Wait. How do you know about the case? She blushes deep red. I might have read it. You did? I laugh incredulously, fixing it immediately after. No, I'm just surprised. That's great. I could use some help. But what made you decide it? Well, Bonnie shrugs. I just wanted to help out, I guess. I'm always just the girl behind the desk, the one with a smile. I saw how you stood up to Darcy, and her thoughts are interrupted by perhaps the cutest man eclipsing the world. A guitar held in his dark hands. His curls are covered in a thin sheen of sweat as he smiles toward us. It takes me a moment and a jab from Bonnie to realize it's me he's smiling at. Hey, he flashes us a gleaming grin, tipping a tall top hat, clashing directly with his leather and chains. Name's Blake, and just like that, the conversation is ruined. No? The smile fades a little as the band on stage drifts off. I guess he's their central power source. I can't understand. I blush profusely. No, it's not you. I just mean, you're Blake Connery, I assume. Bonnie's eyes flash with fear at the notion. I mean, I know it's random. It's mad, but it's so me. Was it fate that brought us together? He brushes past Bonnie. But for once, I don't see her angry that a man is ignoring her. I can see the emotions warring in her mind. On one side, we know that I'm going to have to possibly rob him of all his money. on the other hand, he's hot. You know my name. Well? I pull out the manila folder, reaching for the picture displaying him I grabbed from Dr. Sherman's office. I also have your file. He doesn't display the reaction I expected. He leans back, staring down at his watch. You're working for Sherman, huh? That seems to be the case. So, Bonbon leans back, grabbing her bright yellow purse. I should probably. She leaves her bleach blonde curls bouncing in the wind. Can I just tell you? I try to imitate his smile, only to completely cringe. That man is clearly insane. That gives him a laugh. It's his daughter, Alice? Now I have to stifle my chuckle. But she's innocent. That's just what she wants you to believe. Say, how about you stick with me, and you win this case for me? I have heaps of knowledge for you. And I suppose you know this because you're an expert lawyer? Dr. Sherman holds all his meetings in his house, Blake recites. I was there lawfully, and I never stole his hat. But we don't have the security cameras. I beg your pardon, Sherman has cameras. And even if he won't give you access, I will. And you lawfully took these? Ya got me there. Blake stares sheepishly down toward the folder. I have connections. And that isn't shady at all. If you've been having a bad time in this city, it's because you haven't been living like me. I know it all. That doesn't answer my question, genius. Look. Connery stares back at the clock again. Are you on a break? I have about an hour or two before I need to return to the office. Sherman cut the meeting short. Have lunch with me. I promise that by the end of it, you'll be swayed to my side. And what does that mean? He produces a wallet, holding up a wad of cash. Whatever Sherman paid you will look like a joke compared to what I can give you. I'll even give you more than just money. Okay. I blush. Let's just lead the way, gladly. Miss Olivia. Blake flashes me another dangerous smile. I believe this will be the beginning of a great union. The horseman. The man on the horse was an odd one. I could tell that even as he angled his quarter horse into my beams like it was his turn in the center ring. An Easterner, which maybe 10 years earlier might have seemed even odder. Little dressier than the average rancher, handled his animal like he knew how, but had learned it someplace else. Saw you from the rise, the man said. Easterner, all right. Kind of horse-faced fellow with a government haircut and a big nose that reminded me of the Jew families that had passed through the dust and winds in Pop's tourist camp on their way to California. Not that I gave a damn. Pop hadn't given a shit about God after he took Ma in 32. And so he likewise didn't give two shits about anybody's private dealings with the Lord with or without Jesus. No, it was the man's eyes. Big, calm, curious. Do you need some assistance? My old Nash 400 was running like a top on 4 threadbare but plump tires, and the trunk was flung open with the jack still clamped into place. And then there was the Indian blanket I'd got in trade for some janitor work at the last gas before the next last gas on the way to my pot of gold that had turned into a cesspool about 2 hours ago. Oh, and the shovel lying next to the blanket rolled tight like a Tulsa oilman's stogie on the dirt under the lip of the trunk. even without Jesus putting his 2 cents in. It wasn't the way I'd been raised. But like I said, it was the eyes, unblinking even in my headlamps. And that slow smile he gave me as I pulled Pop's old Colt out of my belt and made him a third eye, like I'd done him the biggest favor in the world. I'd settled in Espanola a couple years after the Depression ended, though, or maybe cause I'd helped the town undertaker put a number of such folks under the shifting Oklahoma topsoil for a few pennies a body, I'd sought out someplace a little more off the path of men, desperate or stupidly hopeful enough to drag their wives and young ones through the valley of death to a pot of gold that didn't exist. But everything shrinks as we grow, my pop once said, and it wasn't too long until they started to trickle south off the California Trail into the desert. College types, engineers, they said, Easterners, Jews, I heard, and more than a few foreigners who weren't fooling anybody with names like Henry Farmer and Nicholas Baker. Now, I'd never been out of Oklahoma before Pop's lungs finally gave out, and I dug one last grave this time for free, and I'd sure as shootin' never met any Germans. As at the time we had an axe to grind with Mr. Hitler, I was a sight more than nervous about the funny voices with the funny names sidling up beside me at the local watering hole on a Saturday night. Didn't help that the government had bought out the ranch school and put me out of the first steady work I'd had since sorting the dead from Pop's barely paying guests. The school and its high-flown Eastern teachers and rich folks' kids playing cowboy seemed a bit silly to me, but groundskeeper's pay was decent, and the Ponces treated me right. Felt no desire to stick around afterwards, even with the new jobs the government and their engineers were bringing to the area. What the Easterners and foreigners specifically were doing may have been the best-kept secret in the Southwest, but the tighter you keep the lid on the pot, the bigger the mess when things boil over. All anybody could guess was it had to something to do with that aforementioned scrap with Der Fuhrer, but folks got rattled with the army and the federal suits, cleverly watching every move the locals made. Bad enough, they were keeping Nazi prisoners and Japanese folks from California on ice down south at Fort Stanton. Seemed passing strange we weren't rounding up Germans and Italians who could blend right in at any military base or shipyard, but my 2 cents wasn't going to buy me anything but trouble, especially these days. The Denver and Rio Grande Western had ripped out the Chile line and pulled the tracks from Espanola in '42, but the town was hanging on between the nearby farms and the new government jobs 10 miles to the west. I was a handy sort with nowhere really to go, so I hung on too, in what passed for the middle of nowhere. If you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. I think that's in the Old Testament, or maybe some tourist dropped that pearl on me on their way to the new promised land. As I now headed the opposite direction, back through Espanola and north past Taos into the mountains near the Colorado border, I could feel God's jeering presence. Poor time to get religion, with 2 bodies stuffed in the trunk and a ticket to hell waiting at the station for me. When I think about it, and believe you me, I have, maybe that's precisely the time. I put them deep in the Carson forest. It was a skill I thought I'd put behind me, but even the dead can surprise you. I was in my bed a few hours before dawn, contemplating and shivering on the bare mattress. It was sheep country. I could get a new blanket in the morning, though at this moment I wasn't sure of the need. Barring rattlers, the horse was the only one got off free that night. Hitler willingly gave up his ghost in the spring of '45, and his pal Mussolini got a date with a firing squad and a public showing strung up like the day's catch outside a Milan filling station. It took close to 3 more years to rein in Hirohito. After destroying the Japanese Navy and taking a string of Pacific islands, hemming the empire in nice and neat, we rained fire down on Tokyo, Osaka, Hiroshima and Fukuyama. I say we, although I spent most of my stint with the 124th Transportation Battalion in Luzon, up to my elbows in axle grease and sweat. I'd signed up 2 months after that night in the forest, reasoning only more blood would wash away what was on my hands and my soul. I was pretty much nobody in the middle of nowhere, and when no GIs or Eastern-looking fellows in suits and badges showed up on what passed for my doorsteps, I figured Uncle Sam had chalked things up to Nazi spies, or an unlucky turn on a dark plateau trail, or maybe Junior, as I'd come to call him, just bugging out. It was those goddamned eyes. He seemed like a man looking for a back door out of purgatory. Wonder if the sergeant at the Santa Fe recruiting office spotted anything like that in my bloodshot brown eyes. See, thing with being nobody, having nobody in the middle of nowhere is the company you're forced to keep. Nobody was ever likely to find the bodies, and nobody was likely ever going to spill a tear over the man who'd soiled my good blanket. But every time I listened to the bodies piling up on the radio, I wondered how many others I'd buried. Just what was it that midnight horseman had been up to at the old ranch school, with his army of eggheads with phony names and their army keeping the whole town under wraps? And why did most of the lot just pull up stakes a few weeks after? Had to be some kind of secret weapon, blow the Krauts and the Japs off the map, my guess. For one bleary moment, I thought my brain had contracted TB and an Irish brogue, but it was one of the Denver and Rio Grande Western's Gandy dancers who'd lost a knee and his toes and the works in between to a 3 p.m. coal car maybe 15 years ago. It hadn't broke him of the whiskey. He read too many of those cheap detective magazines with the gumshoes and masked crusaders and flying saucers and half-naked women about to be sawed up, or worse, and I'd had my wits about me. I'd have heard him creaking down the planks and cleared my stool. "And what makes you think that?" I asked, 'cause it was the noise I needed. "My sister's boy. He does some plumbing and odd jobs for them mad scientists down the road." The old man wheezed. "Seems like everybody's in an uproar over the boss fella gone missing a few weeks back. Seem to think there's spies all about, Nazis or commies or some such. Young Danny happened down the wrong hall, and the soldier boys there grilled him near to meeting him well." "Boss?" My voice went up a couple notches, but he was too stewed to notice. "Some Jew scientist from California supposed to be grand muckamuck of the whole operation. Jingleheimer, Weisenheimer, something like that. Summa the talk is, this Jew might be the spy." He leaned in on the half-leg and grabbed my sleeve as a thick cloud of coffin varnish sent me reeling back. "Now, you think about it, boyo. Why you think every man-jack's knickers are in such a knot, lest something big was in the works? You ever hear of atoms? You know, the stuff what we're all of us made of? Well, I hear tell Hitler and his boys have found a way to split them atoms, to just rip all of creation apart. Unless we get there first and blow the fella to hell first, little wonder them Nazis would want to rub out Dr. Jingleheimer." He then toppled from his stool. I caught him halfway to the floor, jostled him back into place, and made for the door. Crisp desert night outside, the moon too close and stars scattered across the black, nothing like atoms torn asunder. I jumped in the Nash, somehow made it alive back to my shack, and packed for my penance. Recently leaked revelations allege the U.S. Defense and State Departments largely falsified published reports that Nazi Germany and Russia were on the verge of harnessing atomic fission as a potential weapon against America and its European allies, purportedly to spur Allied physicists to escalate development of such an atomic bomb to bring about a speedier surrender by Hitler's forces. That effort, referred to as the Manhattan Project, was conducted under a nearly impenetrable cloak of military security on the site of a former boys' academy near Los Alamos, under the auspices of preeminent theoretical physician J. Robert Oppenheimer. Without revealing the nature of his work, Oppenheimer's mysterious disappearance late one night in 1944 sparked a massive manhunt, and rumors the eccentric scientist had collaborated either with the Germans or the Russians, given his wife and brother's ties to the American Communist Party. The case remains open to this day, and the Manhattan Project ended shortly after Adolf Hitler's suicide and the effective fall of his Nazi regime. Amid the loss of one of its most brilliant minds and fears of further security breaches, the remaining physicists of Los Alamos declared the project a failure. Or so we thought. I talked this week with Isidore Isaac Rabi and David L. Hill, former Manhattan Project researcher. In a 60 Minutes exclusive, Rabi and Hill reveal for the first time that they and other project scientists concerned about the long-range implications of atomic warfare conspired to conceal their findings from the military. Rabi, Dr. Oppenheimer himself voiced doubts about the sanity of releasing such a force into the world, but he was under intense pressure to beat Hitler, beat Stalin to the punch. None of us knew we alone held the keys to a Pandora's box, but without Robert's zeal, we reached a hard but crucial decision. There are questions which illuminate, and there are those that destroy. I was always taught to ask the first kind. The only answer to the question of the day was destruction. If not merely the instantaneous vaporization of entire cities and the then unquantified after effects of ambient radiation, then the geopolitical stranglehold and atomic arms race between the US, Russia, perhaps even the former People's Republic of China would impose upon the human race. And imagine if such a weapon were deployed. There would be no defense, no deterrence, only annihilation. Rabi was awarded the 1944 Nobel Prize for his discovery of nuclear magnetic resonance, a major breakthrough in medical imaging and diagnosis, and his work in microwave technology revolutionized military and commercial radar systems and led to the introduction of the home microwave oven in the mid-1950s. Meanwhile, following the dissolution of the Manhattan Project, project team member David Hill headed up the Federation of American Scientists, later to become the Global Federation of Responsible Scientists, with the overthrow of Joseph Stalin and subsequent collapse of communism across Russia, Eastern Europe, and Northern China. Under Hill's leadership, the Federation worked with the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission and other international agencies to design virtually fail-safe atomic reactors, which have all but replaced coal-fired power facilities and have been credited with greatly reducing air pollution around the planet. We reached Dr. Hill at his Santa Fe home. Hill continues to defend Oppenheimer's patriotism and loyalty, as he has since President Truman branded the missing physicist a traitor in league with communist factions. Hill. The consensus was that the specter of atomic warfare and destruction would come to eclipse any prospect of science in the public interest. We've harnessed the power of the atom to save lives and provide clean, safe energy. I posit we'd never have put men and women on Mars, nor developed a seamless worldwide web of satellite communications and technology, had we created a world occupied solely with averting global apocalypse. Wallace. Not everyone concurs with your assessment. Retired Major General Boris Posh, who headed up the investigation into Oppenheimer's disappearance in 1944, argues you and your colleagues withheld vital scientific information that might have ended the war 4 to 5 years earlier, saving, in his words, countless American and civilian Japanese lives. And to this day, Posh believes Oppenheimer was complicit either in your deception or acts of espionage. He's pushing the Justice Department to bring formal charges against what he called the Manhattan conspirators. Your response? Hill. Mr. Wallace, I'd invite you to imagine a football stadium filled to the rafters with all those American, British, Australian, Russian, Japanese casualties. Then imagine dropping a bomb that would wipe out an area of 5, 10, 100 miles around that stadium. Then look ahead at the radioactive wastes that would linger in the air above that area for months, possibly years, that might carry across 100, possibly thousands of miles. Multiply that by as many bombs as it might take to prove we mean business. As for Dr. Oppenheimer, you have to understand the exhaustion and stress we were all under. Robert's way of dealing with that pressure, his doubts about the work and its consequences, was to ride the mountain trails around Los Alamos, through the Sangre de Cristo and the Jemez mountain ranges. He loved New Mexico, and he loved his horses. We were on the verge of a key breakthrough at that point, and he vanished shortly after supper. Most of us knew where he'd probably gone, and when they found his horse wandering around the plateau about 3 miles off, we figured he'd met up with some kind of misadventure. Dr. Oppenheimer would never have let that animal to languish in the wilds. That was something General Groves and his men would never understand. It was a small item on the Sunday news feed, but the Tao's byline had caught my eye. A massive flash flood had uncovered, and a trio of hikers had discovered what looked to be the skeletal remains of 2 adult males, one wrapped in the shreds of a decomposed wool blanket. A couple ribs shattered by one bullet, another bullet found rattling around in his companion's punctured skull. They'll surprise you, all right. And with them, the rest comes surging back. The soldiers, the flyers, the privates and colonels and generals, the moms and dads and sons and daughters caught in the Spitfire, the moms and dads and sons and daughters snared in limbo, merely for being the face of the enemy, or a fair enough approximation. The odd horseman with the tortured eyes who'd suffered such indignity and injustice for taking a midnight ride. I'd taken a single souvenir that night in the forest, secreted it away to the Pacific on the second great California migration to find that golden pot in the airplane plants and the aeronautics trade. Tucked it in a bedroom drawer through a marriage, 2 sons, a funeral, and 2 graduations. Buried it deep packing for that one final job far, but not far enough away. Now, it seemed, was the time. It had been a tough week in the field, and I'd hoped to catch the satellite feed of 60 Minutes and maybe Columbo, but this finally seemed the time. I set the yellowing badge, number 76, I guessed how the brass kept track of their college boys, on top of the TV monitor, trying not to look in those damnably damned eyes this time. Bye, JR. Then I wrote this for you, whoever you wind up being. You can see the right people get it. Then I think I'll step out for a bit of air. The desert is beautiful at night, especially in the high beams of a double moon, better fires. Dear Jay, I lit the mailbox on fire when I saw you kissing M. Others told me that when feeling too much, one might hurt oneself. There might be cuts along the arm or starvation. I had no inclination toward self-harm. From a very young age, I understood that the world does enough to you. Why do any more to yourself? I saw you kissing M behind the cafetorium, and I ran all 7 blocks home. On the way, I saw the Gozer's blue mailbox, and I knew it had to burn. 1 match around the base, and it went up quickly along with whatever mail was inside of it. The red flag was up, and I did it anyway. Later that night, I attended a slumber party and started the rumor that you had done it, that I often saw you lighting ants on fire with a magnifying glass as though that was a natural origin for someone who would eventually begin setting better fires. Some of the girls believed me. Some didn't care. One told me that you kissed her after her shift at Pizza Grace, and your mouth tasted like a fountain drink. I watched her after she fell asleep. I visualized her waking up to find her hair on fire, but I didn't do it. I didn't want to hurt anyone, not even you. When I asked you to the dance, you told me that you'd already agreed to go with G, even though that was a lie. I knew it was a lie, because I knew enough about you by then. When you lied, your left eyebrow would twitch. Maybe it still does. Do you still lie? Would you tell me if you did? I told you that I understood and wished you well. I knew that you were going to ask G as soon as I was out of sight. Then, if you changed your mind, you'd simply pick someone else to bring. What you were never going to do is show up with me. Not me. The girl who had to wear baggy tops to hide how much she developed between sophomore and junior year. Not me. The know-it-all who the teachers had stopped calling on, because she always knew the path Napoleon took on his first campaign and the first 15 numbers of pi. I don't think intelligence was a turnoff for you. On the contrary, I think you wanted me to be smarter. You wanted me to be so smart that kissing me would be like allowing dark matter down your throat to rip you apart from the inside. You held me to a different standard. I'm sorry, Jay. I didn't know that's what was going on. I thought you just wanted to kiss the prettiest girls in the school. I never investigated what your deeper motives might have been. The day you told me you couldn't take me to the cotton candy dance, I went to the greeting card store in town and set fire to all the Get Well cards. They were at the back of the store, and there was only one cashier working. I made quite a pile, struck the match, and walked right out. By the time the smoke alarm went off, I was already watching from down the street. Lucky for me, greeting card establishments don't have security cameras. I went to a pool party the following weekend and told everyone there that you'd confessed to me a year ago that you hated greeting cards. Seeds were planted. A freshman who was at the party told me that you'd been putting removable tattoos in her locker. Hearts with knives in them, and mermaids who refused to smile. She pulled down her bathing suit bottom and showed me where she'd placed one of the tattoos. It looked like Joan of Arc tied up and suffering her great punishment. I think you're right, she whispered to me in between bites of a burnt hamburger. I think he might be obsessed with fires. Why else would he give me this? The world will give you all the answers you want if you know exactly how to phrase the questions. On the way home from the pool party that day, I saw you in your front yard, mowing the lawn without a shirt on. I waved to you, and you waved back. You flexed for me, and then laughed. I saw a clean line of sweat going down your back to the gray t-shirt that was tucked into your red shorts. I wanted to cover myself in grass and let you run over me. It took me a moment to realize that my hand was still raised in a frozen greeting. You had stopped my time. You'd put me in a deep freeze. Only one thing could dissolve it. The day before graduation, I burned down the school. Part of me knew that eventually it would come to that. I'd used my allowance every week to buy kerosene, matches, bottles, rags, and any other accelerant I could find. The man at the hardware store questioned me about it early on, but I told him that teenage girls were using these types of things to help with our hormones. He seemed perplexed, but no man over 40 wants to know why teenage girls are doing any of the things they do. The next time I came in, he'd set aside some paint thinner for me. It was on sale, 2 for 1. That's what I used in the second floor bathrooms. There was no commencement that year, no caps, no gowns. The only thing thrown up in the air was the spray of a fireman's hose. Students gathered around the periphery of the school. Some cried, I held my homeroom teacher as she asked why anyone would do something like this. I knew that the two of you were writing inappropriate notes to each other between periods. She must have justified it by telling herself that you were mature for your age. And maybe she was right. I try not to condemn anyone if I can help it. The worst condemnation of all has already occurred. The day of the school fire was also the day of the harvest. Everything I'd put into the ground was ready to be reaped. Rumors about your love of starting fires were too widespread to ignore, even though, in many ways, you were the town's favorite son. Your father had been the star linebacker for the football team back when he was in school. Your mother was valedictorian. You were going to do great things, and you were going to go far, and you were going to kiss every girl you wanted to kiss, and never give me more than a wave or a flex of your muscles only to laugh at me for staring. All of that got burned up and turned to rubbish. You went to jail for the very first time. When you got out, you couldn't find a job. Your parents disowned you. You couldn't even find a woman gullible enough to take you in, because by then, you reeked of smoke. Soon, you were dealing drugs and holding up food marts and gas stations. I lost track of how often you were in and out of prison, but I know you're there now, and I'm sorry, Jay. I'm sorry for the part I played. I'm sorry for every match I struck. I'm sorry you didn't see that I could have learned more. I could have caught on faster. I could have bloomed had you only allowed me some light. When you get out, I plan to be waiting for you. I'll pick you up and you can come stay with me. You can mow my lawn. You don't have to give me anything, just the respect I was owed back when we were children. Back when you thought a little cold water would put me out. You never knew that I was electric, did you, Jay? You never tasted my grease. You never thought to smother me. A little cold water. What was that going to do? I'll be standing at the gates when they release you. I'll bring the cigarettes you like. I'll light the first one. Then, I want a kiss. A nice, long kiss. I want to taste the emission. I want you to fill me up with smoke until I feel as though I'm never going to breathe again. The moral of the story. The guard leading me into the room gives a hard yank on the chain. Pain lances through my neck, and I snarl, baring my impressive fangs for full effect. He shies away, naked fear on his face, before remembering which of us is supposed to be the prisoner. Watch it, Mutt, or you'll be drinking out of the toilet through a wired jaw, he says, his tough guy tone betrayed by the quaver in his voice and the stink of fear in his scent. I snort in contempt. Oh, please, C.O. We both know who's afraid of the big bad wolf. His expression hardens, mouth tightening into a white line. One hand drops to the baton sheathed at his waist. That will do, officer, a new voice says. I'll ask you to do your job without further violating my client's civil rights. I look past the guard and his impotent rage to see a man sitting at the lone table in the room. The space is dimly lit, a single flickering fluorescent bulb recessed in the ceiling behind a grating. But I've got good eyesight. The guy's so short his legs barely clear the edge of the chair. I take in his expensive suit, immaculately groomed hair, and a face so wrinkled and wizened it looks like a prune staked out in the desert for a week. He smells of cologne, silk, a hint of moldy straw, and... that's curious. No fear. Not a hint of that very familiar scent. Interesting. That must mean he's either stupid or a villain. Like me. The guard secures my chain to a ring on the floor, giving me just enough play to reach my side of the table, then snaps a padlock on it with a loud click. He then steps back to stand against the wall. The short man's eyes, small, dark, and hard behind wire-rimmed glasses, flick to the guard. Leave me alone with my client, if you please. Not a good idea, buddy, the guard says, glancing at me. You know who this is, right? Of course I do, the man snaps. I also know the privileges that exist between the accused and his legal representation. Now, must I ask again? The guard scowls, shakes his head, and leaves, slamming the door shut behind him. The lock on the door clicks loudly too. I casually stretch as much as I can with the chain and collar, give a shake to fluff out my thick, gray fur. Client, eh? Funny. I don't remember hiring a lawyer. The faintest of smiles ghosts across the man's face. You haven't, yet. But I'm certain you'll want to retain my services after you hear what I have to say. Why's that? I ask in the most bored tone I can manage. Because I can make sure that you don't spend the rest of your life behind bars. I can't help it. My ears prick up at that. I force a derisive snort. Not likely. They have a pretty good case against me. And that is precisely why you want me to represent you. A positively oily grin stretches his lips. Allow me to introduce myself. 2 fingers extend to place a business card on the table between us. I glance down at it. Mr. R, attorney at law, specialist in defense of the wrongly accused. The black letters stand out against the crisp white, cutting across a spinning wheel picked out in gold foil. Yeah, it's a dead giveaway. Mr. Ray, that'd be short for... He raises a small hand to stop me before I can say it. I would prefer if we kept this from being a first-name relationship. Yellowed teeth glint as he grins again. Okay, I say, with a flick of an ear. Lawyer, now, huh? Previous line of work didn't suit you. Let's just say that it was far too labor-intensive. I find my new career to be much more rewarding. It also didn't require much of an adjustment, ethically speaking. So, Mr. R it is for now. For that matter, what would you like me to call you? I shrug, a human gesture I've perfected over the years. Most people just scream wolf and run away when they see me. I see. Then I shall address you as Mr. Wolf, for simplicity's sake. Whatever. Now, Mr. R settles himself in his hard wooden chair. I'm familiar with the particulars of your case, Mr. Wolf, at least those that have been made publicly available. But perhaps you'd like to tell me your side of the story? Now, I actually laugh. My side of the story? Not a lot of people are interested in that. As far as most of them are concerned, there's only ever one side. The one where I'm the villain, just out to do villain things. It's just how the story goes. So you don't deny the charges? Well now, Mr. R, that'd be telling, wouldn't it? I may be facing the headsman's axe or life in a cage, but I don't see any reason to make it easier on everyone. Mr. Wolf, we in the legal profession are required to keep our clients' confidence and cannot be compelled to reveal what is told us in confidence. Okay, whether he's telling the truth or not, I find I just don't care. Well, yeah, I did it. Whatever they say, I did it all. Mr. R removes his glasses, pulls out a kerchief, and starts polishing the lenses. You stalked young Peter and his friends and attempted to murder a duck, I believe. I pretend to wince. Yeah. Got so close, but she was just that lucky. I sigh. I can still taste feathers. And you destroyed the property of 3 industrious pigs? Hey, not my fault if their houses weren't up to code. Of course, then they tried to burn me alive. Lost a lot of fur on that one. Then you actually consumed a young lady and her grandmother? I give a little laugh. and the grandmother's cat. Not too many people remember that part, but I kinda missed out on the satisfaction of a good meal in the end. After I woke up on the riverbank, went through 3 surgeries to get all the rocks out of my belly, and spent 6 months in that stupid plastic cone. Well, let's just say that a certain woodsman is next on the menu if I ever get out of here. Mr. R finishes cleaning his glasses, sets them back in place, all without batting an eye. I see. So, you are guilty, and I must assume that the police have all the evidence they need, since you are sitting here before me, chained to the floor. I pull back my lips in a grin, or a snarl. Hard for me to tell the difference when I'm doing it. Like I said, I'm the villain. I do bad things. No matter how the story goes, that's always how it ends. It's the... oh, what do they call it? The moral. That's right. The moral of the story. Bad people do bad things. Mr. R arches one scraggly eyebrow. What if I told you the story doesn't have to end that way? I cock my head to one side. How's that? Mr. Wolf, my job doesn't necessarily consist of proving you innocent, Mr. R says. Not when I can make you into a victim instead of a villain. Say what? That's right, Mr. Wolf. Instead of making this about your crime, we can make it about you. We'll play up your tragic past, your difficult upbringing. Why? You said it yourself. People look at you and see nothing more than a scary animal. That's prejudice. It's colored your entire life, hasn't it? Is all I managed to get out in reply. Honestly, I'd never thought about it like that. Do you have a mate? Mr. R asks suddenly. Pups? A pack that relies on you? Needs you? What? No, nothing like that. I give my head a shake, trying to wrap my head around all this. Are you saying that you can make it look like I was the victim instead of the villain? Exactly, Mr. Wolf. Now his grin looks positively evil. We'll put you in front of the cameras, paint you a tragic victim of circumstances and biases. All that's required is the right spin on the facts. And believe me, Mr. Wolf, I know how to put the right spin on things. No doubt. All of this is confusing and, well, kinda disgusting. Look, why go through all that? Just post my bail and I'll skip town, how about? I'm only half joking. Again, he arches that eyebrow. To go on the run? To be hunted and hounded the rest of your life? Now I grin. I'm the big bad wolf, remember? What you just described, that's my normal. It doesn't have to be, says Mr. R. When I'm through, you'll spend a few months in prison, after which you'll be set up for life. A comfortable den, plenty of game to hunt, even your own woods if you want. No one will dare bother you again. With enough positive media coverage, I can work out a very favorable deal for you. Deals are something of a specialty for me. Now, how's that sound? I stare at him, narrowing my eyes. What do you get out of this, Mr. Ray? Something tells me you're not doing it out of the kindness of your heart. He gives a short laugh. Oh, goodness no. You see, in the process of rewriting the narrative, there will be interviews, televised appearances, at least one book deal. That means money, Mr. Wolf. Rather, a lot of money. His oily grin reappears, and I get 50%. Oh, now that's disgusting. Sickening. He wants me to lie about what I am, pretend to be something I'm not. A victim. A weak, pathetic, mewling victim. And all so he can exploit my villainy for cash? I don't know, I say. It all sounds like a big lie to me. And you've never lied before? Something about his tone of voice, so cocky and superior, makes my hackles rise. literally. I seem to recall one of the charges is impersonating a little old lady. That's rather dishonest, don't you think? I growl deep in my throat. I like to think of it as deceptive. A predator has to be cunning after all. Indeed. Come now, Mr. Wolf. Let's stop bandying words. He lifts a briefcase onto the table, snaps it open, and produces a gold fountain pen with a flourish. You just sign these documents, and I'll get started turning you into the tragic victim. A victim. Me. I'm a villain. I made the choices that made me a villain. And to be honest, I never really regretted it until I got caught. If not for that woodsman, I'd still be out there, stalking Peter and his friends, blowing down pigs' houses, and looking for my next Little Red Riding Hood. But then, look where being the villain has gotten me. In this room, with a scumbag who wants me to lie, tell people a sob story, deny what I am just so I won't be punished for the wrong I've done, and he can make a lot of money. I think Mr. R is a worse villain than I am, and he's definitely not the kind of villain I want to be. Now let's get this straightened out, I say, the words coming out from behind bared fangs. I'm a villain. I know I'm a villain. I own that. I'd rather just accept that I've done wrong and take what I've got coming. Mr. R purses his lips like he's tasted something really sour. Mr. Wolf, please be reasonable. I think you'd better get out of here, Mr. R, before I start naming names, or I could just gobble you up. Your pick. Mr. Wolf. I lunge forward, straining the chain to its limits. Planting my forepaws on the table, I let out a savage bark, jaws snapping, spattering drool all over Mr. R's nice suit and shiny glasses. He lurches backwards, tumbling out of the chair, briefcase and pen flying across the room. A second later, he scrambles back to his feet, staring at me, eyes wide, and darts for the door. Now I smell it. The fear. Its stink is thick and rank. I guess he really isn't stupid. With one hand on the doorknob, he pauses, glancing back at me. You know they will never stop seeing you as a villain. They will hunt and persecute you, no matter what you do. Maybe so, I reply, suddenly tired of this whole thing. But maybe I've earned that. Maybe if I want that to change, I need to show them that I can change too. I shrug. So, even though I'm the villain in this story, maybe I can still do the right thing. Maybe that's the moral of the story, just another dead girl underwater. Trigger warning. Implications of death, violence, and sexual harassment. By the time the fisherman finds me, I will have been dead for 33 hours, 6 minutes, and 29 seconds. 18 hours since the police declared me missing. 15 hours since Zoe told my biology teacher that my tent was empty, that I hadn't returned from the party we'd snuck out to the night before. Careful, quiet, every twig a possible snitch. It was exhilarating, our hearts pounding, the smell of pine and seaweed thick in the air, and the moon a perfectly curved sickle. Zoe held my sweaty hand and didn't let go until we'd passed the tents and joined the others by the lake. The music on someone's phone was turned down just low enough for us to make out Billie Eilish's raspy voice. One of the guys offered us a beer, kept cool in the pitch-black lurking water. I remember thinking I couldn't tell where the lake ended and the forest began. The first article, published by a local newspaper, reads, "Promising high school student missing after night swim in lake." Shortly after, the Water Rescue Service and Fire Brigade take over the search. Dogs comb the area, their noses trailing through the damp earth. A human chain forms, people moving slowly through the woods, eyes scanning for any sign of me. Even a helicopter hovers overhead, its whirring blade slicing through the heavy, charged air. The search drags on for hours, stretching into the twilight, yet the woods remain silent. The police begin to ask questions. When was she last seen? What was she wearing? Had she been drinking? Did she seem out of character? Angry? Sad? Suicidal? No, and no. She was singing. She was dancing. She seemed happy. When the fisherman finds my body, miles away from where I was last seen, certainty sets in. The autopsy reveals a hematoma on my head and purple spots behind my ears. The coroners examine the water in my lungs and confirm that I wasn't dead before entering the water. I died by drowning. My classmates are questioned again. Zoe claims to have left early, while I stayed behind with her twin brother Tom, who has been in love with me since middle school. Tom's behavior strikes the police as odd. He insists he barely spoke to me, despite people seeing us leave the party together for a few minutes. When my body is examined, traces of Tom's skin are found on my clothes, trapped between the fabric layers. Still, Tom sticks to his story, perhaps because the truth would embarrass him for some reason. Or maybe he's just afraid of the questions that would follow and the scrutiny that might come with them. Tom is right, in the broadest sense. We really only exchanged 3 or 4 sentences that night, but only because Tom's mouth was otherwise occupied with me. I had enjoyed every second of it, and looking back, I wish I'd given him a real chance. But I was too worried about what other people might think. So, as usual, I brushed him off, leaving him to walk away from the party feeling hurt. Cassandra insists she heard Zoe and me arguing that night, just before Zoe headed back to the campsite. According to her, we were fighting over Tom. Of course she would say that. What else would 2 girls argue about if not a boy? Cassandra even claims that Zoe pushed me, though Zoe denies it vehemently. She denies discussing Tom at all, insisting it was about something else, something that wouldn't come to light until much later, when our biology teacher became a suspect. But Cassandra holds firm to her version. The thing about Cassandra is that she's always been a shadow, the kind of girl whose name teachers forget after 2 weeks of spring break. Kelly, Cindy, Carrie, something with a C though, right? So, when she finally gets the chance to talk to the police and be part of the investigation, she jumps at it. Unfortunately, Cassandra isn't much help to the investigators. She leaves the party at 2 a.m., just 40 minutes before I die, leaving me alone with a group of guys who've brought along some tranquilizers. Sitting next to them felt like being stuck in a fever dream, where Jacques Derrida explains quantum physics at a frat party. At some point, I decided it was time to head back. One of the guys casually asked if I needed someone to walk with me, and I said yes, but no one moved. I glanced back, the campsite faintly visible through the cold, white light filtering through the pines. It was only a few meters away, just beyond the trees. I'd walked this path for days, never once feeling threatened by the shadows in the bushes. But tonight, that sinking feeling in my stomach wouldn't go away. Still, I refused to be that girl. The one who got scared at every creak in the dark. The one who needed someone to hold her hand for a few steps. So I stood up and said I'd walk alone. Instead of sticking to the dark trail, though, I decided to take a small detour along the riverbank, a bit longer, a bit lighter, and hopefully a bit safer. One of the guys told me to text him when I made it to my tent, but when I didn't, no one even noticed. 16 days after my death, suspicion begins to shift toward our biology teacher. Devin, one of my classmates, reveals that he had felt ill that night and went looking for the teacher's tent, only to find it empty. Soon after, the teacher's behavior takes a strange turn. he starts making inconsistent statements that don't add up. One day, he calls Zoe into his office after class, where he insists that his earlier proposal to her, before the trip, had been nothing but a joke. She understood that, right? It was sarcasm, he says, claiming that what he really meant was that if she wanted to improve her grades, she should consider attending a tutoring service. And this is where Cassandra steps in for the final time. She confesses that she visited our biology teacher after the party, and that they went to the boathouse, where, according to her, nothing bad happened. He was just there for me. The biology teacher is immediately suspended, but the case against him has nothing to do with mine, as Cassandra's alibi clears him. Meanwhile, the suspicions surrounding Zoe and Tom are too weak to pursue. My case remains unsolved, and eventually people begin to accept the idea that it was just a tragic accident, that I must have hit my head when I jumped into the water. They agree that I seemed unhappy, not just that night, but in general, and that my relationship with my parents, who expected me to excel in everything, was strained. Perhaps the pressure had finally got to her. It's all unsatisfying, of course. Unsatisfying for the local magazine, whose updates eventually dry up. Unsatisfying for the police, left with yet another unsolved case on their desk. Unsatisfying for my parents, who, decades later, will say in an interview that not a day goes by that they don't think of their little girl. Maybe one day, a classmate will write a college essay about my case, reflecting on how it taught them that life can end in an instant. Maybe my story will end up on a true crime podcast, or perhaps Netflix will stretch it into a tightly structured 8-episode miniseries where my body is discovered just 3 minutes in, enough time for viewers to decide if they'll keep watching. Or maybe none of this happens and I'll fade away, like countless other women who are silenced every day simply for being born the wrong sex. It doesn't matter who profits from my story. It doesn't even matter if they eventually find the 2 men I crossed paths with on my way back to the campsite in the wrong place at the wrong time. None of this matters, because in the end, I'm just another dead girl underwater, lifer. The parking lot was empty, except for dry weeds squeezing up through cracks in the asphalt, except for the deserted, rusting basketball hoop on one end, except for rustling leaves skittering across fading parking spaces in the gathering dusk, except for oil spots shimmering with rainbow colors after a recent sprinkling. The parking lot was empty, and, because fate is resourceful, a steady, gloomy rain started falling, blurring any hope of discovering the mysterious body called in by an anonymous tip. "What's in the corner by that dilapidated chain-link fence?" my partner, Andy, asked. "Looks like piles of garbage bags being buried by soggy leaves from here," I answered. "I'll circle around for a closer look." I detect movement. Do dead bodies move? Nah, just rats crawling all over. Better get out and take a good look. Bummer the rain is getting worse and the wind is picking up, turning this into a chilly, miserable autumn evening. Not even a sliver of a moon. Why is that always the way when a body shows up? Andy complained. Can't we simply call the coroner's office to come claim the neatly wrapped package? They would love that and have our badges if it turned out to be nothing more than trash. We gotta confirm whatever it is. Sorry. Get your slicker on and take your flashlight. I'll be ready to call it in. I pulled the squad car up as close as I could as he prepared to exit. Suddenly, lightning flashed. Thunder pealed as a hail of bullets pounded the passenger side. Andy fell back inside his head, exploding and pouring gray matter all over me in the upholstery. Reacting instinctively, I spun out of the lot, laying new rubber on the old asphalt, and bumping over the crumbling center meridian, at the same time trying to figure from which gaping windows in the 4-story abandoned factory building The bullets were spewing, cursing under my breath. F-ing prank call. How can this be happening? Collecting my scrambled wits, I squealed a UI about half a block away and paused on the side of the street, looking back at the front of the building. Like rats abandoning a sinking ship, perps were scurrying out of doors carrying backpacks and rolled-up bedding. They appeared homeless, but any of them were potential suspects, and they were all getting away along with the weapons while I was on the horn to Central. Like a crazy man possessed, I ground into gear and plowed ahead, showering taser rays from my weapon, aiming at legs to slow them down. So what if I hit a few with my bumper? We would need witnesses. Officer down, send armored SWAT, was all I remember shouting into the mic. I sped out of retaliation range and waited for backup, not knowing if any would be available. All I wanted to do was hold what was left of my friend and partner. An 18-year veteran of the force, he was already looking forward to retiring and spending more time with his beautiful wife, Jolene, and his teenaged sons, Andrew Jr. and Joshua. I remember watching those boys grow up. How am I ever going to face them? As the senior officer, I'm the one who was supposed to be protecting him. Instead, I delivered him into a hail of bullets. We let our guard down, dear boy. I don't have anyone waiting at home for me. Why couldn't it have been me with a new hole in the head? It can't even be an opened casket. No mortician can put the pieces back together. Bleak rain continued to fall into the chill autumn night, highlighted by blue and red strobing lights and streaking lightning punctuated by thunder. By the time the captain and lieutenant got there, I know I looked like a blubbering idiot, shivering and quaking. More squads and a special weapons van soon arrived. Don't go in there without armor and shields. I think it was a deliberate ambush set up to kill as many police as they could. Got a fake tip about a body being found, but we were supposed to deliver the bodies. I'd say the bullets were coming from the second and third floor broken windows, but so many people scrambled out of the building you may not find any evidence. Still, someone could be waiting to claim more victims. I put a few down out front. Gotta go find some more. Bet those defund the police activists are happy with this carnage. Force is already down to bare bones. Slim odds we'll be able to round up all them. Easy, Cooper. Look at yourself. You hit it all. You've done all you're going to do tonight. Lieutenant Kramer and I will handle it from here. Someone will assess how you're doing while we assess the situation. Captain Crane commanded. Soon, ambulances were on the scene with emergency medical technicians attending to those witnesses I hit and myself. Bloody, headless Andy was scooped into a body bag, and our pockmarked unit was hauled in for evidence. Ignoring all my protesting, I was delivered to the hospital and examined for holes. Hard to determine what was me and what was pieces of Andy. Really, Doc, I'm still in one piece. Only need to clean the gore off. I'll be all right. You're shaking like a leaf ready to fall. When I'm done with you, I'll assign a trauma evaluator before you crash and burn. Losing a partner like that will have long-term effects if left unaddressed. Doctor's orders. Time off while you see a therapist. I'll have the support of all the guys in the precinct. I'm not sure about a shrink, but I promise you, I'm gonna be someone's worst nightmare once I get back on the street to find the monsters that riddled us. They don't understand what they've created. I'll never retire. I'm a lifer now. You can bet. Gonna rain long-term regrets down on them, son of Satan. I awoke to a bright light streaming through a crack in one of the wooden boards I had put up in a paranoid, booze-infused haze. It was June, and the heat was stifling. My mouth was the kind of dry where your cheeks and lips stick to your teeth, the leftover taste of alcohol offensive. I sat up slowly, the usual nausea kicking in, my head pounding, room spinning. I looked down at my shaky hands, trying to steady myself as I half rolled off the couch. A sweaty silhouette of me left behind, my shirt stuck to me. I stumbled to the kitchen, only allowing one eye open to keep things in focus, my head down as I waited for the kettle to boil, impatient as the usual anxiety kicked in. I knew my drinking was a problem, it always has been. But as I'm nearing 40 now, the mornings are becoming more unpleasant and unmanageable. But I know I'll never stop. I put 2 big scoops of coffee and boiling water into a mug, topping it off with a shot of vodka. I downed it and made another, willing the shakes to stop, my eyes blurry and stomach churning. I took the second mug back to the couch and turned on the TV, slowly coming back to life. My mind was quieter today, a numbness over the usual paranoia or anger that resides in me. Sometimes I think it's a darkness, straight from the pits of hell, the angel on one shoulder missing. As long as I could remember, I had been plagued with dark thoughts, a curse passed down from my abusive father. A life of isolation and self-sabotage, sending me spiraling further into this abyss over the years. Some days, I think I can snap out of it, or have a small voice telling me I need help, and that maybe there's still hope for me. But this had just become a way of life for me now, my norm. I had come to accept it. Alcohol and Netflix were my only friends. I sustained an easy work-from-home job that only stole a few hours each day. My manager didn't bother me, and I didn't bother him. He didn't care as long as I hit the numbers, which I always did. It didn't pay much, but kept a roof over my head and supplied my vices. I flicked straight to the news channel like I did every day. There had been a string of murders in the city, and now they were saying, there is a pattern suggesting that it's the work of a serial killer. I shivered, watching as they wheeled a 6th victim in a body bag, a one-way trip to the morgue. My head pounded again. I swallowed some paracetamol with a swig of vodka, not taking my eyes off the TV. The killings had been brutal. I watched along each time with a morbid curiosity, like I was watching a fictional Netflix series about serial killers, almost forgetting that these were people living in the same city I am. All victims were female, early 20s, normally Good Samaritan types, people with a squeaky clean record who wouldn't have even stolen a pack of gum in their short life. Most were religious and attended church on a Sunday. I'd be safe, standing at 6 feet, fashioning a Jesus-length beard and enough petty crimes on my record to piss off anyone in law enforcement. The media were raving about the symbolism the killer left behind and had even given him a nickname, Son of Satan. It doesn't quite have the same ring as Jack the Ripper or the Zodiac Killer, but they were just scratching the surface of what he does and what he is capable of. This guy was different. According to reporters, he stalks his victims over the course of 6 days, leaving satanic symbolism in his midst. Never leaves a trace of evidence, other than gifts of animal bones or a pentagram, sometimes an upside-down cross, all with no fingerprints or so much as a wisp of hair. The symbols were the only thing that changed from kill to kill. The 6-day stalk, bondage of the hands and feet, and 6 stab wounds to the heart were always consistent. I shivered again. On the dark web, some crime scene photos were leaked and spread vastly around social media. The bloody sight, something out of a horror movie. I chugged another glass of vodka. The police had nothing. They made an educated guess that it could be a male in their 30s or 40s. Probably some crazy religious guy that they had depicted as some skinny, sad sod who lives in their mother's basement. I rolled my eyes and half chuckled, a wheezy sound that made me cough. One thing they all agreed on was that the killer was clever and meticulous. He taunted his victims, and he taunted police, never leaving a trace. All they could do was warn people to be safe and on guard. If anyone experienced any stalking or hints that they were next, were to report to police straight away. Boy, are they not ready for the amount of calls they're about to receive. The fear the media have installed does half the job for the killer. I rolled my eyes again, pouring another glass, slightly amused by the stupidity of law enforcement and media. I turned it off and opened my laptop to get on with some work before heading out to the shop. The bills aren't going to pay themselves. Completing work in record time, I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face, then finally brushed the rancid taste away, swallowing some toothpaste for good measure. I looked up at the disheveled guy staring back. Hair awry, bags hung heavy around my dark pinpoint-like eyes, the spit of my father. I inwardly groaned, my heart palpitating slightly. I changed into some dark tracksuits, tamed my hair with cap and donned some sunglasses. I whistled as I walked outside, sweat pouring from my skin, the back of my neck clammy. I gritted my teeth with discomfort, while the sun beat down harder, the whistling a distraction. The streets were mostly empty, a few dog walkers and cars dotted around. I found myself at the shop and enjoyed the cool feel of air conditioning, taking a long breath in. I picked up the essentials: vodka, fags, and instant noodles, the economy making every transaction feel painful. I felt that rage again as I tapped my card and stormed out, trying to calm my thoughts, and drank the first bottle on my way back. Needing a pit stop, I paused on a bench, starting on my second bottle and chain smoking, until I felt sick and black spots started to cloud my sight. My head hurt as evil thoughts and feelings flooded me. I eventually stumbled home, unsure how I got there and why it was so dark out already. I tripped over my own feet and crashed onto the couch face first, full blackness taking over. I was in and out of consciousness for several days, time missing as I looked at my watch and realized nearly a week had gone by. I really need to stop drinking. I went to the kitchen. Coffee, vodka, couch. The routine continued. I turned the TV on, and yet another murder had occurred, less than a mile from my home. Same pattern for the most part. I smirked and flicked to the next channel. Headline: Son of Satan breaks pattern. My eyebrows creased and my heart rate picked up. Killer stabs victim 6 times to the abdomen, left the house in disarray. Forensics have bagged new evidence. That couldn't be right. My father's voice boomed in my head. I switched to another channel. Son of Satan copycat killer. New information has come to light as detectives connect current killings with a string of murders with similar symbolism and pattern that happened 30 years ago in the countryside. Killer was never found. The voice boomed louder. I ran to the bathroom to throw up and realized my clothes were soaked with blood. I fucked up. My father would be writhing in his grave. His idiot son carrying on his legacy gets caught because he can't handle his booze. I threw up again. Panic rose and I gripped my chest as I struggled to breathe, spots of lights in my vision. The room was closing in. I turned on the shower, holding onto the sink with one hand, ripping off my clothes with the other, before allowing the scalding hot water to wash away my sins. "I'm sorry," I screamed, the disappointment of my dead dad all too much. I sobbed on the floor of the shower, shame and guilt ripping me apart. Red and blue lights flashed past my window, snapping me awake, and I stood up, getting ready run, fight or flight kicking in. Bang, bang, bang! My front door rattled. Panic-stricken, I scrambled for my clothes and slipped, the alcohol haze wearing off. My head hurt as it hit the sink on my way down. I couldn't move. The room was spinning. A louder bang. Footsteps. I faded out. Shadowed intentions. 3 women missing so far. 3 women in just 6 months. The daily news has become obsessed with the narrative, smothering us in stories from every angle. It's all anyone is talking about, since everyone has an opinion. It's always the husband, the shopkeeper says matter-of-factly, crossing her arms. Did you hear that she turned down a colleague for a date? Sounds like he was bitter about it, murmurs the waitress at the local cafe. Maybe if she didn't sleep around so much, she wouldn't have gotten herself into trouble, says the barkeep, waggling a knowing eyebrow my way as I pretend to nod in agreement. Plenty of leads, a few arrests, but still no dice. 1 missing woman is a tragedy. 2 is cause for panic. 3, there's near hysteria. Businesses are closing their doors well before dusk, and schools have moved to home learning via video calls. By the time night falls, an unenforced curfew has rendered the streets deserted. No one walks home alone anymore, except for me. I don't have a choice. I've been following the same path through the city for 3 months. I'm taking care I keep to the well-lit routes, always looking over my shoulder, making sure I'm fully aware of my surroundings and paying close attention to the few people who dare to walk along the main road with me. I try not to look too nervous as I clutch my handbag tightly to my side and walk quicker than usual. Before I left, I set my smartwatch to monitor my heart rate rather than show the time. The beat is faster than usual, as it has been every time I've stepped out into the night for the past 3 months. There's something different about this evening, though. I can feel it in the crisp air. Tension courses through my veins, settling uneasily in my stomach. The darkness is almost suffocating, weighing down upon me as I walk away from the center, the distant hum of traffic fading as I turn down a quieter road. A lamplight flickers above me, highlighting the cracked pavement in a strobe effect. Not that I would wear anything else given the circumstances, but I'm glad I'm wearing flats tonight, considering the amount of rain we've been having. Imagine twisting my ankle because my heels caught on a dodgy bit of tarmac hidden by a puddle. And there it is, a footstep. I spin around, facing the danger behind me head on. Am I sure? The night remains almost perfectly still, aside from the flicker of movement from leaves still clinging to the almost empty branches in the trees above. Tilting my head, I listen, focusing all my energy into honing in on that specific sound. 10 seconds pass. I hear nothing out of the ordinary. On the contrary, it's deathly quiet. Slowly I turn around and continue my journey, sneaking a quick glance down at my watch. 110 beats per minute, getting faster now. The slap of my boots against the wet pavement echoes down the narrow street. The only sound aside from my hot breath escaping my lips, forming plumes of smoke as I pick up the pace towards my destination. So close, but yet miles away somehow. Shadows claw at my heels, casting alien shapes that don't appear to be from this plane. The endless walls of the brick terraces on either side of me reach long into the sky and beyond, leaving nowhere for me to go but ahead or back the way I came. My head snaps up. This time, I'm sure. I hear him. The unmistakable sound of footsteps, rhythmic and deliberate. I reckon he's about 10 meters behind me, far enough that I could outrun him for the moment. I'm confident in that. I quicken my pace, shivering from a potent mix of cold and adrenaline. Everything hinges on my next few decisions, and I fight to keep my wits about me. The metal gates of Terrier's Park loom tall to my left, and I follow where the path splits into the yawning gateway, away from the streetlights, away from the city, into silence and ink-black shadows. The moonlight light illuminates the slick path, the earthy scent of rotting leaves filling the dead air. There's no wind anymore. Maybe it's holding its breath, waiting anxiously to see how things pan out for me. As my mysterious companion and I distance ourselves from society, his footsteps close the gap between us. Finally, I'm aware of my heart pounding against my chest, the beat thundering in my ears. My eyes, wide and wild, flit down to my watch. The numbers are as high as I've ever seen them. It's interesting how difficult it is to distinguish excitement from fear, don't you think? In fact, in a lot of ways they are remarkably similar. Both can heighten your awareness and focus. Senses sharpen, energy surges, thrill and threat merge and blur. My heart rate is the same when I experience both emotions, as if they're interchangeable. He's closing in. I feel his menacing aura maybe 3 meters behind me, just as we reach an area with bushes. We're alone, completely alone. Perfect. Bag already unzipped in anticipation. I slide my hand in and wrap my fingers around the handle of my gun. 3 months it's taken me to catch his attention. 3 months to make sure the cat would become the mouse. Finger tight on the trigger, I slow my pace, welcoming his breath on my neck. Before he can raise the hammer above his head, though, I whirl around like a dust devil, eager to look into his eyes. I watch as it dawns upon him that, in his arrogance, he's neglected to account for the fact that there's more than one serial killer in the area. I inhale the cold sweat of fear that pinpricks his brow as he realizes that, after tonight, only one of us will be left standing, and it isn't going to be him. Blind panic sets in, and he runs. I make sure he doesn't get far. Trial by egotism. The Honorable Judge Harold Brybar strode to the bench, bearing a coy smile. The court knew that smile well, as did millions watching on view screens all over Mars, as did tens of millions back on Earth who wouldn't get the feed for another hour or so. They also knew the arch of his thick gray eyebrows, the well-trimmed salt and pepper hair he'd gracefully let recede, the petite spectacles he wore when reading, and the mild way he cleared his throat to bring the whole courtroom to attention. In offense to all known theories of jurisprudence, Judge Harold Brybar was a celebrity judge, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. As Brybar sat down, he produced his legendary gavel from the folds of his cloak. It was the gavel that had sent General Sabrina Gallo to the slammer. It was the gavel that had brought justice to the ungrateful 8. It was the gavel that had, so mournfully, let the Scarlet Assassin walk on a series of technicalities. Years ago, a rookie reporter dubbed it the cinematic hammer of justice, and the moniker stuck, though Brybar only laughed and shook his head ruefully when asked about the moniker. Chekhov would have surely side-eyed this fabled instrument of law and order. This should be the final day of the trial, Judge Brybar said, after customarily clearing his throat. If Miss Tottle's statement runs long, we'll cut for lunch at 11. How long do you think you'll go? He flashed a smile at the defendant. An hour should do it. Marissa Tottle flashed a smile right back between lips stained dark red. She came to court in a maroon pantsuit with a long matching jacket that almost reached the ground, and dark lipstick and fingernail polish to match. Stylish, but, for her, understated. Earlier in the trial, she'd favored brighter colors, including a pastel blue skirt that drew immense attention, much of it mockery in the press. She'd been on trial for previous burglaries and had proven as much a celebrity as the judge overseeing her case. That she'd taken to defending herself only heightened the circus atmosphere. You couldn't wish for a more theatrical combination of defendant and judge. Excellent, the judge said. That would mean the jury can deliberate over lunch. A smooth running ship at last. The assembled audience, standing room only, laughed nervously, revealing how much tension the courtroom held. In theory, Towtle should be guilty as a Labrador by a demolished birthday cake. She'd been caught red-handed in the most elaborate and movie-like theft in the history of the planet after all. But many speculated Towtle had a trick or two up her sleeve. Gambling websites gave her a 15% chance of acquittal and even a 5% chance of escape. The third prime participant in this drama feels ordinary by comparison. Veronica Brief charted a conventional path as she rose through the prosecutorial ranks. Top grades, hard work, schmoozing, ambition, and a photographic memory. There's little reason to elaborate on her story. Veronica had aimed for calm, efficient, and professional as her persona. She let Marissa and Judge Brybar provide the entertainment. The stately prosecutor drew little mention in the tabloids despite overseeing the case of the millennium. And she'd presented a good case, which was easy in one sense because of how strong the evidence was. Someone had stolen the twin pins of Mars, diamond-encrusted spikes that ceremonially finished the oxygen dome of the first Martian city. Marissa Towtle was a known high-stakes burglar and ex-con. She'd been present at the benefit concert from which the pins were stolen. She'd purchased the chemicals needed for the distracting foam bomb that had gone off at the concert, and most damningly, one of the diamond pins had been found in her very apartment. The list of witnesses and items and evidence is so long that, again, there's little need to go into much detail. The most troubling possibility was that if the jury liked Marissa too much, that they were simply so entertained, they might ignore the evidence and vote for acquittal. Today, the defendant would make her last appeal. Today, Marissa Towtle, who'd fired her lawyers after just 4 days into the proceedings, would make her closing argument. She wasn't a lawyer, had never been to law school, and committed innumerable mistakes of law throughout the trial. But she still possessed the supernatural confidence of a legendary burglar. So she'd plowed ahead, learned from each mistake of process, always found a way to laugh with the audience as she suffered a series of sustained objections against her. The Red Planet stood entranced, listening to how she would make her final plea. Marissa Towtle rose. She was quite short, but cut a dramatic figure nonetheless. She strode to the center of the room to address the jury. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my honored peers, good morning to you. Also, good morning to everyone watching in the live audience in this wonderful city of New Olympus and all across Mars and our sister planet of Earth. Also, a quick shout out to anyone reading the transcript in the future. That's serious dedication. Laughter. The prosecution has done a thorough job presenting the evidence against me, and I would be foolish to claim no fear. They found one of the diamond pins at my apartment. Can you believe my incredulity? Without that one piece of evidence, all they have is hearsay and circumstance. And who hasn't been hurt by hearsay and circumstance? I was sorely mistreated on the day they overturned my home. Veronica had decided early in the trial not to be surprised by anything Marissa said. Here she was, starting her final defense by bringing up the single strongest piece of evidence against her, submerging it in a strange cocktail of jokes and grievances. Still, she was as oddly compelling as she'd been the whole trial. Have I mentioned how good you look, jury? The fall weather has really brought out your fashion sense. Such lovely browns and greens. I'm going to miss you all when this trial is finally over. And soon it will be over, won't it? Oh, I don't know if this is legal. Is it legal to compliment and reminisce with the jury? It is, if there's no objection from the prosecution. This was the judge, now looking in Veronica's direction with a raised eyebrow. All around the court, Veronica felt all eyes suddenly on her. And it was true. she could object for relevance or ingratiation, which Mars had added to the legal code 50 years ago. "No objection," Veronica said after a pause worthy of a sitcom, to titters and laughter from the audience. She hadn't intended to object at all, no matter how wild the defendant got. It's considered poor form to object during closing arguments, unless the faults are egregious. Plus, ordinary folks see through flattery and immaterial wanderings most of the time, and that should be especially so in this case. Marissa wasn't just on trial for grand theft, but also for assault. When she'd set off the foam bomb at the dedication ceremony, 3 people had been injured, and many dozens more might have been. These charges alone could add up to decades behind bars. A jury might excuse burglary if they liked a defendant, but harming innocent spectators? No way, Veronica thought. Marissa had avoided lengthy prison sentences from previous burglaries through clever negotiating, and because she'd always been careful to avoid violence. Now she might be mere hours from a lifetime in prison. How was she so calm? At this point, Marissa had moved on to a PowerPoint presentation with a selection of quotes projected onto the large screen across from the jury, with certain words highlighted for effect. The rotten witch made all the plans and said it would be an easy score without any risk of harm to anyone. That's what one of my supposed henchmen said about me, if you'll remember. I don't see why that insult was necessary. Read the next quote, this time from a witness who supposedly saw me outside the concert hall. She was laughing like a hyena, or like some evil witch. With the shouting inside, I could barely hear her, but I was close enough I could just make out the cackle. I could read each and every one of these quotes, each more demeaning than the last, but you can look over the full list if you've got the stomach for it. So many horrible things said about me, which I don't mind. I can accept taunts and jeers. But it is certainly interesting that so many of these witnesses couldn't help but include spiteful, disparaging remarks. And you'll notice how many bring out the W word. It almost feels like they were coordinating their testimony somehow. Veronica caught a glimpse of the jury. She read ambivalence on their faces. Scowls, smirks, narrowed, focused eyes, and furrowed brows. They were all paying attention, but none appeared sympathetic, and only a few seemed amused. She found it galling that Marissa would imply misconduct from the prosecution. Early in the legal process, Marissa had tried to trade the location of the second diamond pin for legal protection, which Veronica would never have agreed to. Not leastwise because the police were convinced they could lean on her conspirators to produce the second pin, an assumption which, 7 weeks later, had not come true. Those negotiations were inadmissible at trial, but made Marissa's attempts to cast the prosecution as corrupt all the more preposterous. Marissa knew she was guilty, and knew the prosecution knew she was guilty. And then there's the matter of the diamond pin of peace, found in my apartment, right under my very bed. It's the linchpin of the case against me. But do you find that likely? That a supposed master criminal would conceal the single most damning evidence in the most obvious and cliched place to hide something? Ha! And that underscores my next point, that the diamond pin of prosperity is yet to be found. If I had stolen them both, why hide one in an obvious place, then another where the police have yet still to find? I'm not going to accuse anyone else of being the real thief, and therefore the person who planted the evidence while keeping half the spoils for themselves, not right at this moment anyway. I don't have the resources of the police or prosecutors to chase leads and likely suspects. But how can you not be suspicious of these circumstances? Marissa had raised her voice by this point. Despite her grandiosity, She'd kept her tone civil, even playful. But now she strode about the floor, her jacket swirling in great red arcs. She turned to the prosecution table and approached Veronica, though even with her heels, she stood barely a few inches taller than her adversary, sitting up straight. Marissa leaned over the table between them. Veronica held her gaze in as steely a manner as she could muster. She wasn't intimidated, but feared smiling at this bit of theatrics, which might send the wrong message to the jury. They've stacked things so thoroughly against me. A huge team of cops and prosecutors, all working to dig up evidence. 3 of my friends called to testify against me. Hundreds of hours of security video. Reams of texts stolen from my phone. All this effort searching for any slip-up, inconsistency, or wrong place, wrong time circumstance. And in the end, their whole case rests on a single, dubious discovery. Marissa whirled on Veronica, her jacket cape swirling like a tornado. She approached the judge, held his eye contact for many moments. Veronica couldn't read her face with her back turned, but Judge Brybar's eyes narrowed, turning from amused to suspicious to worried. Only then did worry enter Veronica's own mind. Could Marissa really have a grand plan to turn the trial on its head, or even to escape? Everyone in this courtroom stands against me. I've been fighting every official and advocate aligned for a single purpose. These whole 7 weeks I've fought. She stood right before the judge now, a dark red fingernail pointed but a meter from his face. Control yourself, the judge warned, his voice steady. Marissa slowly retreated her hand to her chest, but kept the finger out. Then she approached still further and placed her hands on the edge of the bench. Judge Brybar screwed his face up in an apoplectic grimace. I kindly ask you to back away, the judge said with barely concealed rage. And Marissa did so. She turned slowly, her jacket an eddy rather than a hurricane. The whole audience appeared to exhale at this drawdown in tension. The calm wouldn't last. The true thief, the true mastermind, is in this courtroom right now. Marissa raised her hand, extending that damning index finger clad in crimson, thrusting it high in the air like the barrel of a smoking gun. The courtroom turned deathly quiet. Marissa twirled her finger in the air. Once, twice. A woman screamed in the audience. Several people stood. Veronica noticed the judge fumbling for his gavel. Why was his gavel not to hand? Veronica's photographic memory went to work, rewinding to a minute prior. The gavel had disappeared from the moment Marissa had placed her hands on the bench. When she'd made that dramatic turn, she must have... Approach, Your Honor? Veronica called out, but was drowned out by the growing tumult of the audience. She stood and shouted, Approach, Your Honor. Your gavel. She has your gavel in her sleeve. The chaos intensified, cries and laughter mixing together. Judge Brybar's eyes were wide as Phobos and Deimos in the Martian night sky. The bailiffs stood frozen for a moment, but one caught Veronica's eye. They nodded at each other and sprung into motion. Veronica charged. She couldn't say why, necessarily. But the thought entered her mind that perhaps this was a grand distraction to allow Marissa some clever escape, and that was just too much of an affront to the seasoned prosecutor. It was a breach of decorum to get involved in bailiff duties, but Veronica had been a track athlete in college and had taken basic police training, and there was so much energy in the courtroom. The bailiff, a stocky woman with a tight ponytail, whose expression almost never changed. Her name was Lawrence, Veronica wanted to say, got there first and held Marissa under the arms. Marissa was making a show of struggling without really struggling, calling her capture a brute. Veronica held Marissa's eye contact while she riffled in her sleeves, producing the lost gavel within seconds. "I believe this belongs to you," she said, with what she hoped was cinematic showmanship, as she cast the gavel onto the bench. Adjourned. Adjourned. Take the defendant into custody. The judge had retrieved the cinematic hammer of justice and was banging it on the bench like a woodpecker. Slowly, the veins in his forehead receded as the bailiffs took Marissa away. Next, the judge leaned down to whisper to Veronica, "Meet me in chambers. I fear we're looking at a mistrial." Of course, a mistrial. Was that Marissa's plan? But how would this help her? More chances to escape, maybe, but then she'd surely earned tighter security from this fiasco. She'd wait in prison for the next trial, and the evidence against her would be as strong as ever. Why had she done this? Why had she made such a scene? But then, she'd so loved playing the lawyer, stirring up drama and having all eyes on her. These last 7 weeks may have been the most exciting of an already legendary life. With this performance, Marissa Towdle hadn't earned her freedom, but she'd earned another shot at being the center of the known universe. Dig deep. Other than a faint glow coming from one of the back rooms, the town's charity shop was in darkness, its front door firmly closed. Although it had opened in 1985, the building had been used commercially since the 1800s, when it had variously been a pharmacy, a bank, and a tavern. The shop was close to the river in Marpleton, a pleasant English market town which had once been home to a nearby priory. In ancient times, monks had wandered back and forth to sell their wares at a market which still existed in diminished form across the road. Regulars were now peering through the shop window, but the main lights stayed off. A few of the shop's helpers were huddled in the back room. Patrick, the treasurer, had collected the spare keys from the greengrocer to let them in. The gatherers were addressing one topic, namely, why their long-serving manager, Rhea, had failed to open up the day before. "I just can't understand it," Ivy, one of the shop's founding members, said. "I've never known her not to turn up, unless she's on holiday. In all the years I've known Rhea, she's never had a day's sickness." "Wasn't she going to New Zealand to visit her sister?" Patrick asked. "She was, but not until the following week. It's in the shop diary. Here, take a look." Ivy tapped the relevant pages meaningfully. "I'm not doubting you, Ivy, but she may have got the dates wrong. She wasn't in the habit of making mistakes." Ivy's loyalty knew no bounds. Patrick adopted a different approach. "You've tried Rhea's landline, I take it?" "Several times. Each time it went straight to answer phone." "Right. Still, I expect we're worrying over nothing." "But you have to admit she has been a bit distracted lately," someone piped up. Patrick turned to Silvana hopefully, but she shook her head. "I've tried her on her mobile, but nothing." Silvana was a refugee who had joined the shop 2 years earlier. Since Rhea had taken her under her wing when she first came to England, her English had improved markedly. Silvana had been on the verge of admitting her true feelings for Rhea. Reality had crushed the likelihood of her returning to her homeland anytime soon and been replaced by something entirely unexpected. An overwhelming love for another human being. Silvana's great wish was to know whether that love was returned. Rhea clearly liked her, but was it worth risking their friendship for more? The path to such an admission seemed littered with obstacles. Now, the mystery of Rhea's whereabouts could be added to an already growing list. "Did Rhea say anything about changing her holiday plans, Silvana?" Patrick asked, determined to get to the bottom of things. "Number I went to her house for my lesson last Wednesday. She told me she'd be away all next week." Silvana had considered the matter carefully. Yes, that is so. Patrick said. I guess I'll have to contact the area manager about reopening the shop. You'll need to do that. Volunteer phone numbers are stored in the locked cabinet, and only Rhea has the key. Ivy interjected. Head office have contact numbers too. Everyone knew Rhea always carried a set of keys on a fob attached to a waistband. Patrick joked she secretly had a cellar key for the shop's more trying customers, to which he'd received an enigmatic smile. The actual cellar key had supposedly vanished in the mists of time. Certainly, there was no call to use the cellar with ample storage space elsewhere. In any case, the cellar door was kept permanently locked, preventing anyone getting trapped if there was a fire. Patrick scrutinized the rota sheets. Maybe Judd would be willing to help if we reopen the shop, he suggested. Silvana, who distrusted Judd, said nothing. 3 months earlier, dressed in black jeans and hoodie and trailed by a mournful cocker spaniel, Judd had shown up to inquire about volunteering. When Silvana had bent to pat his dog, it had backed off, whimpering. She gets nervous round new people, Judd had explained. Tucking away the banking money, Patrick had gone to fetch Rhea. A young man's inquiring about volunteering, he'd told her. Shall I send him through? What's he like? Rhea was wearily tapping information into the computer at her desk. He seems pleasant enough. His dog's rather nervous. Rhea massaged her aching neck. Send him through, she said. Rhea had confided in Silvana about her difficulty in getting references for Judd Dig Deep. Eventually, he'd presented her with 2 typed ones, supposedly from an ex-employer. With typical thoroughness, Rhea had rung one of the numbers to learn more about the new helper. When a voice answered sounding suspiciously like Judd's, she'd intended to investigate further. However, other things had intervened. A few weeks after this uncharacteristic omission, Judd was indeed proving to be an asset. Willing to turn his hand to anything, it was a relief not having to lift heavy sacks and boxes donated by the public from one end of the shop to the other. With little guidance, Judd had transformed one of the sorting rooms, leaving it immaculate. One evening, when Silvana cycled past the back of the shop, she noticed a group of undesirables hanging with Judd, engrossed in conversation. She hurried past, hoping she hadn't been seen. She raised her concerns to Rhea, who told her it was nothing to worry about, that she'd keep an eye on things, and bafflingly added, I'd rather you didn't mention this to anyone else. The day the shop reopened, without Rhea at the helm, was Silvana's birthday. Patrick invited her to join him later for one of his wife's specials, homemade pizza and pear wine. The food tasted delicious, but she pushed her plate to one side. You're still worried about Rhea, aren't you? Patrick observed. Her cell phone is dead. It's strange. I knocked on her door last night, but still no answer. Patrick got up. I tell you what, I happen to know Rhea's neighbor, Angela, from the book club. She looks after the garden when Rhea goes away. She may well have a spare key. I'm sure there's nothing to worry about, but it wouldn't do any harm to check if everything is all right. Silvana was relieved. That's a great idea. Thanks, Patrick. I've been known to have a few in my time. Come on, get your coat. Let's see if we can solve this mystery. Half an hour later, the pair were standing in Rhea's house. The hallway led into an open-plan kitchen diner with gleaming countertops and state-of-the-art gadgets. The smell of coffee lingered invitingly. When Rhea's partner Lindsay had died 5 years earlier, she'd left her with a generous insurance payout. Silvana sighed, remembering the other day when she and Rhea had drawn close over a bottle of wine. Rhea had even given her a present. Only to be opened on your birthday, she instructed. But beneath the gaiety, she'd been out of sorts. Rhea had brushed aside Silvana's offer of help with a brisk, I'm fine. I'll check down here if you do upstairs, Patrick said, jolting Silvana back to the present. The passport was lying on the bedside table. However, the photograph bore little resemblance to the person Silvana had come to love and admire. Having spent time working for a private detective agency when she was younger, instinct overrode caution, and she began a meticulous search for clues. Predictably, Ria's shop keys were lying on the bedside table. More unexpected was the discovery of another set of keys attached to a ring with a tag labeled cellar. "Are you all right?" Patrick called up from the bottom of the staircase. "I'm okay." Silvana tucked the cellar keys into her bag. Then she remembered Ria's present and opened it. She was surprised to find a pay-as-you-go phone already charged up. "Well?" Patrick exclaimed. "Did you find anything?" "Just this." She gave him the passport. "That's odd. It appears she never made it to New Zealand after all. Maybe it's time to involve the police." "What? Right now?" "It is rather late. I doubt they'll want to be disturbed tonight." Patrick thought of the half-opened bottle of wine waiting back home. "I'll act tomorrow morning. Shall I walk you back?" "No need. I can take care of myself," Silvana said firmly. The moon was her only companion as Silvana descended the cellar steps at the back of the shop. With growing unease, she encased her hands in a pair of gloves and took off her shoes. She didn't want anyone to know of her presence. After 3 attempts, the door creaked open and she was met by a cloying damp, overlaid by something else. Something unpleasant. Tensing, she flicked on her phone torch and spotted a narrow corridor with another door at the end. Filled with foreboding, she slowly turned the handle. She smelt the body before she saw it. Wearing the trademark hoodie, the bloating, discolored thing in front of her, could hardly be called human. Judd lay slumped against an upturned table, his eyes staring and opaque. Silvana covered her face with a handkerchief to prevent retching and inspected the scene, noting the bloodied head and smashed vase lying beside it. The blood had pooled and dried, staining the clothes and floor. She was no expert, but if the rotting undertones were anything to go by, death had probably occurred a few days earlier. Even then, horror was blunted by relief. So long as it wasn't Ria, she had the strength for anything. But where was Ria? Adjusting to the dimness, Silvana tried to make sense of her surroundings. Some crudely constructed shelves filled with storage tubs and packets lay stacked against one of the walls. The place was obviously some kind of drugs den. Could Judd's death have been the result of a disagreement with other gang members? Silvana's stomach lurched. What if they turned up and found her? She'd only just locked the cellar door and picked up her shoes when she heard voices on the driveway. Somehow, she managed to scramble behind one of the bins underneath the fire escape. Hardly daring to breathe, she waited until the scuffling feet passed and the gang disappeared down the cellar steps. Then, she bolted into the night as fast as her trembling legs would carry her. She would decide what to do when she got home. Halfway across the town's park, muffled ringtones came from her bag. "Silvana?" The voice was clear as day at the other end of the line. "Ria, is it really you? Thank God. Are you all right? Where are you calling from? Talk to me." "If I tell you, you must keep it to yourself," Ria said urgently. "Of course. By the way, I have your keys." "The shop keys?" "The cellar keys. Long story. I have just been down there. I found him, Judd, dead. It was horrible." Silvana began to laugh hysterically as the shock kicked in. "You went into the cellar?" Ria repeated. "Why?" "I needed to know if you were all right. I was so afraid I was going to find you, not him. When I saw your passport, I knew you couldn't have gone abroad, that something must have happened. I didn't get the chance. What happened? I will tell you, but not now. Not on the phone. Patrick is planning to go to the police tomorrow about your passport. Rhea asked. Did you touch anything when you went into the cellar? Did you touch him? No. Sylvana's teeth were chattering from shock. It's cold outside. I was wearing gloves. But what do you know about Judd? Why were you wearing gloves? I don't know. I had a bad feeling. I didn't want to be implicated in anything. Back home, I once worked at a detective agency. I learned about not touching crime scenes. You may want to call the police, Rhea said. But please, can I ask you not to tell them I got in contact or about me giving you the phone? We'll meet soon. That is, if you want to. I'll understand if you don't want anything more to do with me. Of course I want to meet you. It seemed silly pretending now. It's all I think about. Sylvana's heart flipped when she saw the distant figure standing on the pier below. The matinee performance at the Pavilion Theater was in full swing, and the pier was almost deserted. She came up behind Rhea, patting her on the shoulder. Hey! Rhea turned, instantly relaxing when she saw her friend. Hey! Sylvana sank into Rhea's arms. For a long time, the pair embraced. It's so good to see you, Sylvana said. Likewise. Rhea glanced round. Does anyone know you're here? Number, and I'm so hungry. Rhea grinned. How about some fish and chips? I'll treat you. You mean the famous English fish and chips? Rhea grinned. I've discovered a great place on the front. She linked arms with Sylvana. Come on, let's eat. Then, I'll tell you everything. Judd was a bad lot, Rhea admitted later. He was running a drug racket, and I threatened to report him to the police. It doesn't surprise me. But how did you find out? Not long after I joined the shop, I was clearing up one of the back rooms and came across a discarded cabinet. There were 2 sets of cellar keys in it. I never told anyone about them, partly because I didn't want a lot of fuss. I wanted to keep it to myself. Unfortunately, Judd caught me coming up the stairs one evening and demanded to store his things there. I didn't like the way he spoke to me. When I refused, he threatened to torture his dog in front of me. He implied if I didn't comply, I'd be next. His eyes were so cold. For the second time in my life, I felt real fear. There would be time enough to ask about the first time, Sylvana thought, clasping Rhea's hand. I'm afraid there's more, Rhea said dully. You probably won't want anything to do with me when you hear the rest. Sylvana clutched Rhea's hand more tightly. She'd come too far to be brushed aside. Why don't you let me be the judge of that? She said firmly. Whatever it is, we'll bear it together. You see, I love you. I need you to know that. You do? For a moment, Rhea's face shone. That's a relief, she said, laughing. I thought it was just me. Did you? Sylvana laughed too. I may have had my suspicions, but I didn't want to say anything. Oh, I'm so happy, Sylvana said. But hold your horses before we get carried away, Rhea warned. Hold my horses? An English expression. It means don't count your chickens. Count my chickens? Sylvana, my love, let me finish my story before you say anything. Okay, sorry. Sylvana nibbled a stray chip. Rhea was smiling in spite of everything. In the end, I couldn't stand being held to ransom by a bully like Judd. A few days ago, I foolishly decided to confront him in the cellar. He went to grab a knife from the table. There was an old jar on one of the shelves, and as he turned, I smashed it over his head. She shuddered. I couldn't tell you all this, but I made sure you had the phone before I left. I hoped you'd stay in touch. The day after, I headed here, not wanting to be traced. I paid for everything with cash. But surely the police will realize you only acted in self-defense, Silvana insisted. Perhaps I should have gone to them straight away, but I couldn't face it. Ria's hesitation was palpable, especially considering what? In spite of the warmth between them, Silvana felt a sudden chill, like someone walking over a grave. What aren't you telling me? Ria's voice broke. I'm terminally ill. At best, I only have months to live. At worst, it will be weeks. I have all the medication I need. I just want to spend my last days in a place with happy memories. I can't believe it. But Silvana knew Ria was speaking the truth. She tried to disguise her anguish. How long have you known? She whispered. I only found out for certain the day before Judd threatened me in the cellar. Maybe I wasn't thinking straight. I should have told the police everything long before, but by then I was in too deep. I'm going to stay with you. Silvana had never been more certain of anything. Ria shook her head. Stay with me tonight and go back tomorrow. It won't be long before the police check the cellar. It will look odd if you're not there. I have every faith in your survival skills. Look how far you've come. In the meantime, there's something I want you to have. What is it? Ria handed Silvana 2 envelopes. Inside one is a plan of the cellar. After years of searching, I think I may have finally uncovered the sealed entrance to a tunnel leading to the old priory. My father was a historian and suspected there might be one near the shop. The other is a copy of my will. It's my final and dearest wish to make your life better when I've gone. You have no idea what you are getting into. I am no saint, but no one really is. Some people are less evil. Some people are more evil. I have done things I am not proud of and will have to live with the consequences once they come. I do, however, refuse to feel guilt for what I have done. There are reasons behind my actions, and no one will convince me they are not for the greater good. I am writing here in my diary to be able to get it off my chest, as I cannot speak to anyone about it. I wish I could scream it from the top of my lungs, but I can't. If the secret comes out, it probably will be huge. The local media are already talking about it, and when they catch whoever did it, it will be loud. In my mind, I am a hero, but in people's eyes, I will not be. If anyone is reading this, probably after I have been caught, know this. I refuse to feel bad about it. I meant what I did every time. My heart is pounding with excitement, but I close my notebook and rest my head on the wall behind me. I've been doing my assignments for over a year already, but even thinking about them makes my heart race. It gives me rush, flushes my cheeks, and keeps me motivated to keep going. I love everything about it. I look at the time on my watch and get off the bed. Time for my double shift at the bar. I put on one of my tightest blouses with low cleavage, comfortable jeans, and tie my hair in half up, half down style. Touch of lipstick, mascara, shoes, and I am ready to go. As I walk out of the house, I feel the cold breeze tickle my skin and I shiver. I hate cold. As fast as I can, I lock the door and rush to the car. When I arrive at the bar, there are quite a few customers in already, even though it is only 5 p.m. I drop my bag off at my locker and wash my hands before I walk out to the main room. The music isn't very loud yet, thankfully. The outside daylight is still shining through, ruining the night out vibe, and people are divided between drinking coffees or beers. No spirits in their hands just yet. I make small talk with the colleague I'm taking over from before they leave, and I make my way to the right side of the bar to check if all fruits and garnishes are restocked and ready for the night. For those who never worked at a bar, they never are after a day shift. I slice lemons and oranges, moving onto the limes, when I hear the sound of a metal knocking gently on the polished wooden bar. I look up and immediately smile. My partner in crime is here. She is the most gorgeous woman I have ever met. Has long, curly black hair, bright blue eyes, and a smile I could not stop thinking about. I pour her a whiskey on the rocks and without a word, let her casually look around for the first 10 minutes. "Is your cockroach here already?" I ask, and she shakes her head. "I don't expect him here so early," she replies with a soft sigh. "Besides, I wanted to give you some attention before I see him." I smile and roll my eyes. "Lizzie, keep your flirting skills for the boys. I know what a sneaky little snake you are." She laughs at my joke, but doesn't reply. "How did you meet this one?" She grabs her glass and swirls it around, watching the almost melted ice cubes float in circles. "I accidentally bumped into him at the grocery store, very conveniently wearing one of my cutest dresses. We have been chatting on my fake phone for a week now. And he is definitely the one that did it?" I almost whisper, leaning closer towards her face. "Yes, Polly. He did do all of those unspeakable things to that girl a year ago." She whispers back, and I can smell the whiskey coming from her breath. "Then his rich daddy hired a lawyer, paid off some of the important people, and the cockroach is enjoying his life." She puts the glass down and straightens back in her chair. Not for long, though. We make small talk as the time goes, in between me serving customers until about 6 p.m. when the cockroach walks in. He is a tall man with brown, messy hair, sharp jawline, and dressed nicely in some expensive clothes. I can't tell you what brand they are because I know nothing about it, but the way he wears them with cockiness, I can tell he spent money. His dad's money, I remind myself, and continue wiping the already clean bar, trying to make myself look busy. Liz gets up from her chair, greets him with a kiss on the cheek, and sits back down in front of me. They order a round of drinks, and she starts to work her magic. They spend hours on chatting and laughing, although I know Liz is faking it. She always does. When the clock strikes 9 p.m. and her date is pretty tipsy, they order the next round of drinks. I make them and turn my back to the camera to grab the lemon off the cutting board with the pill between it and my finger, and I drop it in his drink. When he starts talking incoherently, Liz grabs his arm and quietly walks him out of the bar. I wait a few minutes before I ask my colleague to look after the bar as I need a quick break and leave as well. I find them in a back alley, the cockroach sitting sloppily on the floor, resting his back and head on the wall, and Liz standing above him, looking at her phone. As soon as I walk up to them, she looks up. I spoke to his victim. The girl was still so upset about what happened. She whispers, with anger in her eyes. This piece of... He took something away from her she will never get back. He deserves what is coming his way. I don't reply, but nod in agreement. I look at the guy's face and feel disgusted that he not only felt it was okay to do what he did, but also decided consequences are not for him to handle. My stomach feels tight, something heavy like rocks growing inside it. I am not sure if it is from nerves, stress, disgust, or excitement from what is coming. It is Liz's time to deal with the man, and I need to get back to work soon enough. I help her tie his hands and feet, put him in the boot of the rented car, and turned to Liz. He should have admitted and faced the punishment, I hear Liz say, as she slowly walks towards the driver's door. She isn't looking at me, and I am not sure if she is talking to herself or me. He is a gross, creepy cockroach who has done something horrible, and he needs to pay. The smug smile he had on his face when the case was dismissed, knowing he got away with it. I see her shake her head in the streetlight falling on her from above. Well, he didn't. They don't anymore. I whisper back and walk into the bar. HIM. I can feel the headache getting worse as the shouts don't end. Mr. Robertson came to report his son's missing, but ever since we took all the information and said we will look into it, he has been shouting at various officers. He wanted the whole station up at this moment and searching for his son. We tried explaining to him that we will not be able to find him within the next hour, so when he kept shouting, we threw him out, threatening with a ticket. I spin around in my chair to look at the cork board again, but feel hopeless. Missing men keep being added to it, but no more clues have been discovered. I feel like a complete idiot. Ryder Robertson's picture have now been added to the right side of the board, alongside Henry's, Lewis's, Christian's, and Jake's. All of these men, various ages, occupations, and lives, have been missing, and it was my job to find them. I hear someone walking up to my desk, and I turn to see my partner Jesse. I could put an egg on your head and would be able to fry it within a minute, he says and smiles at his joke, but I don't smile back. I am too tense. Hey, I know it is hard, but with a new victim, there is a possibility for potential clues. I nod without saying anything and turn back to the board. Maybe walk me through what connects these men. Sometimes speaking things out loud helps to see things that could have been missed. I sigh but agree, for the sake of not having any other ideas. Henry, aged 54, went missing in April 2023. In February 2023, he was found not guilty for domestic violence on his wife. Lewis, aged 22, missing in July 2023. There was an old report to the police about attacking his ex-girlfriend, but she came back to retract the report, saying they just argued and she was okay. Chris went missing only a week after Lewis. They are the same age. I don't, however, have anything that links him to the rest of the guys, so maybe he is not part of it. Jake, aged 32, went missing in December 2023. Only 3 months after his lawyer argued that 5 women that came forward from his company about inappropriate behavior towards them were unstable emotionally and had a vendetta against him. So the case was dismissed. And now we have Ryder, who a year ago assaulted a girl, but somehow the DNA samples the doctors collected disappeared right before the trial. All of them have been seen with a woman at a bar the night before they went missing. So, the only thing that connects these men are vile actions against women. What if the women did it? I laugh and roll my eyes. Yes, because the experienced detective didn't think of that. I will check with the girl from Ryder's case, but all others have rockstone alibis. I pinch the bridge of my nose with my fingers and rub it, trying to get rid of the headache. Soon enough, this case will be assigned to someone else, since I can't seem to get any leads. And this would be an absolute nightmare for a young, ambitious detective like me. I needed to get at least something to keep me going. I think you need a drink, Jesse says, and I look at him from under my eyebrows. When we're done tonight, we are going out. And, he says quickly, raising his finger to stop me from interrupting. I will not take no for an answer. So here I am now, at the bar, sipping my beer and listening to Jesse vent about the argument with his girlfriend. I politely nod, but only listen to every third word because the focus is escaping me too quickly. I love him like a brother, but help me God with how much he talks. I look around the bar, trying to look casual, but the moment my eyes land on her, there is nothing casual about me. She walks in with her long strawberry blonde hair, gorgeous black dress, and boots heeled so high, I am surprised she isn't falling every second step. But she has this confident aura about her. She has her head held high like she owns this bar, and I am mesmerized. Jesse notices that because he stops talking and nudges me with his elbow. "Go, speak to her," he says with a smirk. "Undust your flirting techniques, wipe the cobwebs, and go." And so I do. I get up, still holding my drink, and sit down next to her at the bar. "Do you mind if I sit next to you?" I ask, and she turns, looking at me with big brown eyes. She smiles. "Of course not." She answers softly. "My name is Polly." "Alex," I say, and shake her hand. "Let me buy you a drink, Polly, if that's okay." Petrified. You would never have noticed it if you weren't looking for it. That was precisely the point. The instructions given in my embroidery group had been clear enough. After nightfall, take a stroll on the second lane past the bakery, look for the unlit lamppost, and turn down that dark alley, they said in hushed voices as the pianist began playing in sudden loud fervor by coincidence. Then you will see a mossy stone staircase, which you will descend, and at the end of it, there is a dim hallway. She lives through the set of green doors on the left. The doors are tall and French like my husband's mistress, but peeling and weathered. I can tell they were once painted a lovely shade of emerald green. Half of that green paint lies in small piles of flakes on the cobblestone. I debate knocking and decide instead to reach with false confidence for the rusted copper handle. It turns downward easily. A small bell rings and echoes. "Welcome." On the poster she is grotesque, an example of how time and sin turn a person sour. But in person she has the kind of enduring beauty you can't tear your eyes away from. "Do come in, darling. Don't be shy." Contrary to popular belief, I don't bite, although I can't say nothing here does. Her voice is like a wind chime, melodic and resonating, barely brushing over the crashing waves of her words. I wonder if I'm here too long if that voice will drag me out to deep sea. Or did that only work on men in the myths? "Take a seat, love." "Yes, there is perfect. Would you like a cup of tea?" "Well, it's never too late for tea, is it now?" I enjoy it late into the night myself, but maybe you've been raised more proper than that. Here, the cup is warm, not hot. If she noticed my shaking hands when reaching for it, she didn't say a word. It takes more than a few seconds for my eyes to adjust to the warmly lit room after a dark and shadowy street. Among her many talents, it cannot be said that she was a good decorator. The shabby boards of the walls are empty, but for an assortment of faded newspaper clippings from the highlights of her anonymous career. Obituaries, mostly. A tattered blue curtain with tassels hangs behind the armchair she's perched in, dividing off part of the room. Eccentrically painted shelves house arrays of books and bottles of objects my gaze prefers not to settle on. She would have been called a witch for her collections had she not already acquired numerous more colorful nicknames by the public. The only item of some value is worn loosely around her slender wrist, a heavy and ornate gold watch, the kind of thing that would make a petty thief's day to see glinting underneath a man's sleeve in the street. She catches me admiring it and smiles thinly, holding up her arm up to eye level. Isn't it a beauty? It was my first husband's, this watch. On the 10th anniversary of his death, I'm going to smash it to bits and melt the gold into a necklace for myself. I deserve a little gift from him, I think. Her laugh unnerves me, but I find myself too curious to be afraid. I politely say my condolences for her husband's death. Oh, darling, don't be sorry that that man is dead. The one good thing he did was to be the inspiration for the charity work I do. I haven't always done this. I used to be an actress, you know, a leading lady of the stage. Men would come from all over the city to see my shows, for I was beautiful then. Sometimes after the shows, they would approach me, usually blind drunk, complimenting my dress and what was underneath it, asking for a kiss or a drink or a night. And sometimes they didn't ask. My husband became my husband not because he asked, but because he damaged me. And he was rich enough to get away with it, and clever enough to know that marriage was my only option. She smooths down the skirt of her maroon dress, then looks up at me with a solemn expression I can't fully read. It isn't hard to believe she was once a sought-after woman. Though sunken in age, her cheeks are smooth and her face looks as though it was hand-carved out of porcelain by God. Her hair is twisted into a dark crown atop her head, secured with metallic pins. Her eyes are like a cat's, but not a house cat. No, definitely not. Like those of a tiger that has been left to go hungry for far too long. I will her to continue talking and not look at me with those eyes again. We sip our tea in unison, upholding our masquerade as ladies. She takes in a breath. He said he loved me, and at the beginning I believed it. He may have loved me. He certainly desired me. I think mostly he loved seeing the desire and jealousy of other men when he told them I was his wife. But that got old fast. So did I, in his eyes. When it had been a year and I still had not given him a child, I turned ugly to him, and he acted ugly accordingly. One night, he came home from the pub talking about how the other men's wives had filled their houses with children by now. He spoke of babies like cattle. Then he threatened that he ought to tell the whole town that I was secretly a whore and leave me. I should have kept quiet and obeyed and smothered him in his sleep, like a good wife. Instead, I promised him that as long as I was alive, I would never let a child be born cursed enough to have him as a father. I'm sure you know what happens next. Or otherwise, you wouldn't be here, my darling. She traces a scar on her chin that I hadn't noticed before, extending along her jaw to the start of the delicate bones of her neck. I imagine it snaking around the rest of her throat in a ring, strangling her pale skin, and my breath catches. It looks as if lightning struck her. She was struck, though not by something as rare as lightning. I instinctively touch my collarbone where I know without looking there is a ghastly bruise. My modest neckline covers it, but somehow it feels like she knows it's there. My mark of pain. I hope it goes away quickly so my husband does not think me unsightly. But then again, perhaps that will not be necessary. I nod at her meekly to show that I do know what happens next. I can't say whether he truly meant to kill me, but to hurt me, to wound me, to make my thoughts and words disappear in flames. He meant that with all his heart. The funny thing is, it was him who made my words true. Of course, he couldn't have known that I was with child. Even I did not know then. After, no one would ever get to know. I made a gravestone, although there was nothing to bury. And then, a month later, I buried my poor sick husband next to it, marked only with a slab that did not bear his name. wealthy and beloved as his gold in his life, in death he became only stone. The disease had taken him so quickly that there was no time for anyone to save him. Shame on chance to take him from this world so young. Got him like poison, essentially. The porcelain around her eyes cracks faintly in amusement. I have nothing to say in response, my mind stuck on the picture of a crude gravestone smaller than it should be. Now, love, how would you like your tragedy to occur? The widows in my town all chose differently. Most agree that the worst methods are only to be used for the worse husbands, but sometimes there is no rhyme or reason to it. After all, all's fair in love and war. Millions of second and third and fourth thoughts crossed my mind on the way here, but now those voices are silent, and there is only mine and hers, and the input of the hissing wind outside. Well, what will it be? In 2 weeks, it will happen. On the way home after a day of work, my husband will feel a bout of hopelessness that gives him a nudge to hurl himself off of the local bridge. The river below is not a kind one, especially to those who never learned to swim. He will have been drunk, since he often is, and everyone knows how he gets when he's drunk. No one will discuss a death as taboo as taking your own life. My children and I will cry and wear black for weeks, though no longer than what is expected. At the same time, the black of our bruises will fade. He won't be missed very much, really. Perhaps that French woman will miss him, but she would have met the man that I knew soon enough. I will decide to raise my children in the countryside alone, and we will be happy. I cannot say yet whether I will regret it. The final time I will see the woman's wild tiger's eyes, she will tell me that not once has she regretted anything in her life. She will say that it was a pleasure to do it, and fearfully I will believe her. Oh, it really is getting late, love. Your family must be at home expecting you. I reply that they are, and I thank her for her kindness, nervously reaching to shake her hand. How much blood has coated it? On the posters, they say she has killed 3 men, but I know these were simply the times she wanted it enough to make it gruesome. The posters also envision her as grotesque, which means that they have not ever seen her, or the mark on her jaw from her fall after being struck by lightning. The posters know nothing. The men know nothing. We women must stick together, yes? The image of my young daughter appears and consumes my mind. I would do everything in my power to ensure she never has to know the instructions to get here. There will be no scars for my girl to trace. I will make sure of that. I nod and drop the woman's unassuming porcelain hand. Beneath the sound of her wind chime voice is a softer noise I hadn't paid attention to before, almost like a breeze rustling through dying trees, overlaid with the humming of the earth. It is separate from the wind and the rushing of my blood. She notices my piqued interest, and rather than say anything, stands, chuckles, and regally draws back the tattered blue curtain behind her. In view now is a cage filled with twisting and writhing scaled bodies, hissing and competing with each other for air. They move as one, a trembling monster of green. I step back in sudden horror. She isn't looking at me, but I see her eyes flash ravenously. You don't have to worry about them, darling. Their venom is reserved for the venomous, easy money. Debbie said that it was lucky for us that the weather would make for fewer people on the roads, less chance we'd be seen. 25 freaking degrees. I do not like the cold. This will be the first time I've ever done anything with Randy. This thing was his idea, I think, but it was Debbie that brought me into it. There's $6,000 to be had, and it sounds like no problem having it, if if you don't mind robbing some old lady, which I don't. This weather is awful though. They're always predicting snow, but we don't usually get any. When we do get it, it's pretty, covering up the trash on the ground, making the town look better than it really is. So, Debbie told me about this, and then has Randy tell me the details. We're planning on tricking this old lady, but they don't really have a handle on how to do it. We're going to tell her they're from the city, tell her they need to look inside her house. Randy looks like a teenager, and Debbie's a girl. They need me to be the man from the city. I told them I had a blue shirt with badges on it. It had belonged to my brother Danny, who's doing time in the state penitentiary, back when he worked for the city. I've got his van too, and it's plain white like a service vehicle. Debbie was Danny's girlfriend before he got locked up. Now she's Randy's. She ought to be my girlfriend because I'm a lot more like Danny than Randy will ever be. But I get it. Randy is smart, and Debbie wanted somebody who was not like Danny. So, we got this plan. It's Randy's plan, but we're all in on it. I have a gun. It's a gun Uncle Terrell gave me when I was a kid. It's a .22, but it works. Randy said not to bring it, but I really want to have it with me. You can never tell what might go wrong. What if this old lady has a gun? Did he ever think about that? So, I got the shirt and my van. We got what we need. This morning, we went back over what to do. We go to the old lady's house at a little after 12. Traffic in town is busy, but this place is outside of town. It's on a street that zigzags off from the highway toward Atlanta. I drive up in front of the house, parking so that she can see the white van if she looks out the window. I get out and go up to the door with Debbie behind me. Debbie is going to be wearing a big coat, and I'm going to say she's my trainee. First, though, I have to tell the old lady that there's been a problem with her electric bill and that she's being charged too much. The city is sending me to fix it. I'm gonna tell her. She opens the door, because who wouldn't want somebody to fix it so that a bill is lower? And that's when I tell her who Debbie is supposed to be. I'm asking the old lady where the kitchen is, because this problem is probably at the outlet the refrigerator is plugged into. When she starts to take me there, Debbie asks if she can use the bathroom. While I'm in the kitchen, Debbie goes to the old lady's bedroom. Randy says the money is in the bottom drawer of her Chester drawers. I keep the old lady busy till Debbie comes to the kitchen. Then I make like I fixed the problem, and we leave. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. The old lady won't know she's been robbed. The next time she looks for the money and it's gone, she won't think that it might have been the city electric guy. She's old. If she does remember us, she sure as hell won't remember what we looked like. Randy says there's about $6,000 there. I'm like, how do you know? He says the old lady is Dexter Lockwood's granny, and Dexter told him, we gotta give Dexter some of the money. Randy says no, that Dexter is stupid, and just told this without thinking up the plan himself. Randy is staying in the van while Debbie and me go inside. With the weather as cold as it is, it wouldn't be a good idea to turn the thing off and just hope it will start when we get back. It's usually reliable, but in this weather, I don't know. I'm leaving it running with Randy inside, out of sight, and damn, it is snowing. So, I drive a little slower on the way, looking around to see how many cars are out, and since the snow just started, there's quite a few. We get to the house, and it's not what I was expecting. I thought it would be something pretty nice, but it's not. It's a little bit bigger than the shotgun houses in Milltown, but not by much. There's a carport full of junk, and the Plymouth in the driveway looks like it hasn't moved in a while. I asked Randy if he was sure this was the place, and he said that he was. I parked on the street and looked over at Debbie. She's a pretty girl, but the kind of pretty girl that knows she's pretty. The coat she was wearing had a fur collar that she pulled up to cover a good bit of her face. She said, "Here we go. Part 2. Debbie." When Steve pulled up in front of the house, I could tell that he was scared, and it wasn't just because of the snow. He was dim in the head like his brother Dennis, but Dennis wasn't scared of anything. That's why he was locked up. A little bit of scared can be a good thing. It keeps you from being foolish. Randy and I had gone over the plan a good bit before we got Steve involved. He had the shirt and the plain white van. He was too dumb to send in alone. Somebody needed to go with him to be sure he didn't screw it up. While we're going over the plan, Steve started talking about having a gun he wanted to bring with him. Randy said no. A gun would change all of this. We would go from basically pulling a scam to maybe getting charged with assault with a deadly weapon of an old lady. I'm scared that Steve brought it anyhow. So, it's below freezing, and the snow has started to stick. I didn't say anything though. We needed to be focused on what we were doing because this was $6,000. 2 for each of us. I could last 6 months on $2,000 if I was careful. And I was careful. I'm not mentioning that until we get this done. I want my money, and then I'm done with Randy, and with Steve, and with Dennis. When he stopped the van in front of the house, I could see Steve starting to freak out a little. I didn't want him to spend too much time thinking, so I just looked at him and said, "Here we go." I got out of the van and started around. Randy got in the driver's seat. We went to the door and knocked. The old lady opened it right away, like she had been standing there waiting for us. She's tiny. I mean, I'm only 5'2" myself, but she's shorter than me. A tiny little old lady. "Can I help you?" Steve stutters a little, but manages to say, "We're here about your bill. Has it been too high lately?" "What bill?" she says. "The electric bill," he says. "Has your electric bill been too high?" "It's high," the old woman says, just like any other old woman would have said about any other bill. The old lady is tiny, but she's mad, staring at him right in the eye. "Let me come to your kitchen," Steve says. "I can show you what the problem is." "I need to go to the bathroom," I say, but the old lady doesn't hear me. The old lady looks at me and says, "They got to send 2 of you to look at it?" Steve is in over his head. "Let me come to your kitchen," he says. The old lady's hackles are up big time, and I can see she's not scared. She knows we're trouble, and she's not going to let us in. I say again, "I need to go to the bathroom." "I can show you where the problem is, and I can fix it and save you some money," Steve says, and he sounds desperate saying it. I could see where this was heading. She would slam the door and call the police, and even if we didn't get caught, there wouldn't be any money. That was for damned sure. I shoved past Steve and pushed the old lady backwards. I thought she would fall, but she didn't. She staggered a step, and I was inside. I spun her around and pushed her face first into the sofa. I didn't want her looking at us any more than she already had. I could hear Steve snatching drawers open in the next room. I'm thinking the jerk doesn't remember where the money is. Randy had said specifically that it was in the bottom drawer in a cardboard box under some old nightgowns. Why the hell could he not find it? I hear him cussing then. He comes out and says, "Debbie, you're going to have to come and look for it." I can't find it. Idiot! Names! Now the old lady knew my name at very least. By then he was beside me, leaning into the old woman himself, holding her there. I got up and went to the bedroom and saw that he had ransacked it. The room straight across the hall was a little bathroom. There was one other door still closed. I went to it. I opened the door, expecting to find a different bedroom, the right bedroom, but instead, it's piled high with boxes and crap. Her junk room. Damn it, I said. I went back to the front room where Steve continued to hold the old lady down. I leaned down to her and said, "Where is your money?" "I don't have any money," she said. Steve started to let her up, and it made me so mad that I slapped his head. He leaned back into her. "You do. We know about it. It's supposed to be in the bottom drawer of your Chester drawers in a box. Now where is it?" She said, "My Christmas money?" "Yeah," I said, wondering if she thought we wouldn't take it if she called it that. "It's gone. I spent it." Now I was mad. How did Randy get such bad information? What the hell were we going to do now? Finally, I said, "You must have started saving up again for next Christmas. Where's that at?" "In my sewing room," she said. I didn't say anything to that. "The sewing room," she said. "I heard you opening doors. I know you went in there." "The room with the boxes?" "Yeah, I keep it in one of the boxes in there." "Which one?" She started describing where it was, but I thought there was no way I was going to go in there and find it, even with her description. There was crap everywhere in that room. "Bring her down here, Jeff," I said, heading down the hall and expecting Steve to understand that I was referring to him. Again, it took 2 beats for him to catch on. He held the old woman by the back of her neck, pushing her in front of him. I pulled my coat up high enough that she couldn't get a good look at my face. When she got inside the room, she went to a stack of boxes and moved them around, finally pulling out one that looked, to me at least, like every other box in the room. She fumbled and opened it as we stood behind her. Part 3. Randy. There was supposed to be $6,000 in the box. If anything, I thought there might be more. I told Debbie about it, hoping she could talk Steve into doing the actual theft. Her idea was better because she knew about the official-looking shirt. I didn't want to deal with Steve. He was stupid. This needed to be simple, not simple-minded. Debbie planned it well. None of us knew how the weather would be that day. The temperature had been around freezing for a few days. Then it dropped into the 20s, and then it started to snow. I thought about calling it off, but I didn't want to lose Steve. We could do this. Debbie had Steve practice everything he was going to say and do. She walked him through it over and over, until we were all bored to death by it. The main thing was to say he was from the city, and that there was a problem with the electricity, and he could fix it and save her money. Once they were inside, the whole thing would take 2 or 3 minutes. I thought the shirt would be enough to make Steve look like a utility worker. It wasn't. He looked like a doofus wearing a work shirt. It was too late for me to say anything to him or Debbie. We were committed to the plan by then. I looked at him and wanted to ask if he had brought his little gun with him, but I didn't. I just wanted to hurry and get this over with. When we got there, Steve is like a raccoon caught in a car's headlights, and I think, damn, we are done for. I thought about pulling the plug, but I didn't. I should have, but I didn't. Debbie came through, getting him out of the van and headed toward the house. I watched them till they got to the door, and I realized how much snow had fallen. Maybe 5 minutes passed before I heard the gunshot. That son of a bitch had brought a gun after I told him not to. He fired again, and I thought, dumb bastard has killed her. I was already out of the van, which I had left running and with the door open, and was running toward the house. I can hear Debbie crying, and I know it's because she just watched that fool kill the old woman. The door pops open and Debbie comes staggering out, doubled over. I grab her shoulders and raise her up. There is a widening red patch at her stomach that I don't want to look at too closely. I put my arm under her and help her to the van. I can't very well drive her to the hospital and explain that our partner accidentally shot her while we were robbing an old lady. And I can't walk away from that situation either, I realize. I opened the side door and laid her down. "This is messed up," I said. She didn't say anything back. I ran back to the little house, knowing that neighbors might have heard the gunshots and called the police. I needed to get Steve and the money and get the hell away and figure out what we needed to do about Debbie. I didn't want to see the dead old lady. I didn't. As soon as I got inside, I yelled, "Steve!" There was no answer. I went down the little hall and looked in the bedroom, but no one was there. I started into the junk room, but I fell, slipping in blood on the floor. My feet slid from under me, and I went down hard, banging my head on the floor. Someone spoke my name. I turned my head and saw Steve lying on the floor beside me. Blood throbbed slowly from his neck. He was not dead, but he would be soon. I heard my name again and looked up to see the old woman standing above me, her face filled with anger and sadness. "Randy," she said. Then I saw that she was holding the old Colt pistol that had belonged to my grandfather. I didn't realize she still had it. I should have, but I didn't. "Hey, Grandma," I said.